Low battery.
All right, well, I'm going to have to edit that part out when we upload this. All right, here we go. Hiya! Hiya! Yes, ladies and gentlemen. For the Fringe FM, coming at you live from the middle of nowhere, the center of everywhere. Here once again to give you yet another scrumtralescent dose of conversational boogie. This is Shift Happens. Boom. Yeah, man. Do follow us on Twitter over at Shift Happens Pod. Or is everybody calling it X now? I don't know. I'm going to call it Twitter as long as possible. We got some cool stuff coming up for you this weekend, including tonight's show right now. More on that in a minute, ladies and gentlemen. It is December 15th, 2023. Rounding out this wild and wacky year. And tonight, we have one of our favorite returning guests, and that is none other than guerrilla novelist Casper Parks. We will get to him in just a minute here. How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Let's see, real quick reminder. If you can't help out our associate producer, Brad Harris, his wife Michelle has suffered some serious brain trauma. It's pretty gnarly, and, we need all the help they can get, and, they got a GoFundMe going. They've been doing pretty good. They've got about halfway there, and, but still a ways to go, and, we talk about it every episode, so you know the drill. If you go to Brad's Twitter over at ADS Brad Harris, he's got a link to the GoFundMe there on his Twitter. And even if it's only like 2 cents, every little bit literally helps. So let's help Michelle in her recovery. What do you say, folks? What do you say? All right. So missed the show last week because I was out of town. Went to Austin to go see Queens of the Stone Age, and then I came right back to Houston to see them again the very next night. An epic weekend indeed. And so we're back tonight. Tomorrow, Pulp Addicts Pod returns, and we got a special episode with... he's from this website company group called Sega Saturn Shiro. And they're basically like the... I don't know, what's a good analogy? I don't know, but when it comes to anything Sega-related, more specifically Sega Saturn, they're like the, that's where you go for any new information for homebrew games being made for it, or any sort of Sega Saturn related news or anything, including the new Saturn Pro controllers that came out. They were involved in its production. So we got Dave the Saturn guy is going to be on the show. So that's tomorrow night Saturday the 16th at 9 o'clock Pacific. And I believe we're doing that on YouTube. We're not doing it on Twitch anymore. So there's that. And then this Sunday, me and Jess Rogie, we, however, will be on Twitch back for our retro video game stream session this Sunday night. That'll also be at 9 p.m. Pacific on Sunday. And then we've got a big video game stream coming up next Tuesday. And so, follow Jess on Twitter, or, follow both of us, really. But, yeah, follow Jess, and then you can follow me. Follow us over at Shift Happens Pod. We post all the links and times and all that stuff for that stuff over there. All right. And let's see what else. In case you haven't noticed, we are not on the Fringe FM tonight. The Fringe FM is having some sort of technical... I can't even get into the station, so... I think the station is down anyway, so we'll be back on there next week. So if you have any friends or whatever that are listening, that are spinning their wheels over there, wondering where we are, we're not on there tonight. So tell them we're over here on Spreaker and shifthappensradio.com via the built-in Spreaker player. And that's all the tomfoolery to get out of the way for the beginning for now. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring on tonight's guest. He's been on here a million times. You got to know him by now, ladies and gentlemen. Guerrilla novelist, Casper Parks. What's happening, Casper?
Hey. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear, my friend. Loud and clear.
I wasn't sure if I need to be louder or not. So, okay, first, get out of the way. Grand Theft Auto Trailer 6 is good. Gigi and I both agree. Tom Petty's Love is a Long Road is the soundtrack for the trailer. Excellent. Okay, let's move on to UFO news. Okay, so... We got some disclosure legislation moving through the Congress and the Senate, blah, blah, blah. And there's been a lot of, mean nastiness between senators from both parties. It's not like a partisan issue. It's kind of a bipartisan thing. They're all mixing up. But there was a real push to water it down. We're going to release what we know about the UFOs. We're going to water it down, all right? And it looks like that's what's going to happen, and Biden's going to sign it. So we're going to get some kind of watered-down version of something, probably in the coming months, sometime in 2024, of what the government knows about UFOs or UAPs. I doubt it's going to mention aliens or anything of the sort. An interesting note, Lockheed Martin, which is, according to Daily Mail, dailymail.co.uk, I have an article there. Let's make sure I give them credit for what I'm reading here. So they have Lockheed Martin is a $112 billion defense company, and they're one of the people that are objecting to the first piece of legislation that got watered down, being more, in other words, they're watering down disclosure, and Lockheed Martin, defense contractor, also does some aerospace, I believe, they were lobbying to get it watered down. So that right there, the fact they were lobbying or whatever it is they were doing, that maybe the word lobby is not the right word, but they were opposed to the legislation the way it was originally written.
Yeah,
before it got watered down. So, that's why we're going to old school tonight for conspiracy theories. I think
Yeah,
it's just there's too much old school stuff that's coming into play now. Some of the stuff's been around for decades, decades. So, at any rate, so that's kind of interesting in the news. Another thing that's in the news, which kind of plays into what we're talking about tonight, is they just did the defense budget is $886 billion. And I'm sure stuff's going to get tacked onto that along the way next year. But every year it keeps going up. I remember the 1980s when we started going crazy on the defense budget under Reagan to break the Soviet Union. And, man, I'll tell you, We all had the impression as soon as the Soviet Union fell apart, our defense budget would drop. And it ain't dropped. It keeps going up and up and up and up and up, you know, with no real accountability, in my opinion. But yeah, so, but there's another piece of legislation that I don't, some of the government spy capabilities on U.S. citizens. Well, it says abroad and foreigners, but you know how that goes. Probably everybody. Um, you know, to increase and or maintain their spy powers. Another piece of legislation that's floating around right now out there, and it's going to come up for a vote, is the government wants. Let me back up on this. You know, when you go to a restaurant or especially fast food or into a big supermarket chain or something like that, Gigi, and they say free Wi-Fi,
Oh yeah,
log into our Wi-Fi, right? You know, like the Electronic Foundation Frontier, I think they're ones that would say don't ever do that because
yeah. You don't want to
they
do
can
that.
access your phones, man. Don't, you know, I would never log into the Wi-Fi at a store. No
Yeah,
way. But I find that when I'm in there, a lot of times my cell don't work. And I don't know if it's because of the building or if they have stuff that's blocking the cell phone signal so that you have to log into their Wi-Fi and then they can access your phone and learn all about you, all your contacts and everything else. And who knows what they can access through that, man? I mean,
yeah,
are some of these supermarkets and chains have a cell phone blocker out signal out there? Oh, it's just a building so thick with a brick and blah 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 blah. And that's probably really what it is. But the
yeah.
conspiracy side of me says they got blockers there, man, to force us to the Wi-Fi so they can access our phones for data. You know, that's the conspiracy part of me.
Yeah.
But it's probably not true. It's probably more the buildings block it.
I mean, I bet, there are some
Wouldn't
places where that
surprise me.
happens, but
Yeah, surprise me at
and
all.
and I
But still,
yeah, I've seen. I mean, like first thing that comes to mind is Conscious Life Expo. You know, you go there at the Hilton LAX, and
yeah,
yours from the second you walk in, your cell phone does not work. You have to use the Wi-Fi, and in any hotel at any given time, there. I mean, that's the number one place where hackers they'll just get a room, camp out, and just hack whoever's on the network. That's their gig, you know.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, so there's legislation pending right now to allow the federal government of the United States unlimited access to those Wi-Fi's without a warrant.
Mm.
Okay, that's legislation that's pending right now. Okay, you know, and we really, really, really need to think about that. And you
Yeah,
know, it's go ahead, Gigi.
I mean, that's just a morally complex issue right there. Just their approach to, that I could see pros and cons for that. Yeah, that's a tricky one. Should we let them do that? The answer is
Yeah,
probably
it's
no, but
yeah, because I imagine a lot of people will go drive to a fast food or something, sit in the parking lot, jump on their Wi-Fi, and do some really raunchy stuff, or whatever it is they do, commit crimes, using the Wi-Fi, from a fast food restaurant 20 miles away or something, so they can't be tracked. Excuse me.
see, I can imagine them. I can imagine them doing that at like a Starbucks that's right next to a military base. But should they do that in some random Starbucks in Hillbo Duck, Texas, or whatever?
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know. It's just so bizarre that legislation's floating around. Well, and here's some old school. This is more old school conspiracy. Okay, and I would think Jim Mars would be sort of this persuasion. John Anthony West was as well, I believe. Someone could tell me I'm wrong, but I think they're more of this persuasion that everything we're seeing right now in politics, especially in the United States, because that's where we're at. So, you know, really, we have a former reality TV star, so-called business guy, that has a so-called massive cult following. Okay, with everything that's going on in his life. Okay, then we have on the other side, we have a guy that's in his 80s. Well, the other guy's close to his 80s too, but the other guy's in his 80s. 40 years as a senator, whatever it was, 8 years as vice president, and now 4, possibly 8 years as president. And it's like you look at it and go, well, okay, so the old guy is a lesser of two evils, that's for sure. You know, and It's like senior citizens right now. It's like they're trying to bring post-traumatic stress on the country. Really, it is. It's like this whole thing is orchestrated to a degree. It's orchestrated to a degree. Because you can never get a politician that they're going to let get up there and put them on media without bringing them down. This is where the internet's nice. I think Elon Musk makes an effort, but a lot of people are getting his ear, and it's access. Access is still access. So he's done some things I'm not real happy with, but it's his life, not mine. Live it. It's your life. Live it. Is Yeah, it's just so. It's all like it's orchestrated, Gigi. Think about it. You can't. You know, and this is the way it's been going. I'll be 67 very soon, and so I've been around for a while, and it's like the Republicans come in, rip away a bunch of your freedoms, which they did. 9/11 is a prime example of that. Who was controlling everything in 9/11? Oh, wait, the Republicans had Congress, the Senate, and the White House. But Democrats went right along with it. But either way, ripped away a bunch of our freedoms. They hand off all the money to the huge corporations, massive amounts, right? Tax cuts, subsidies, everything else. Democrats are still doing the subsidies to the corporations as well. This is all the corporate state crap. And Lockheed Martin, bing, 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 on this U.S. disclosure thing getting watered down, in my opinion, that's corporate state. Military industrial complex maybe, but it's still corporate state. And probably space exploration industrial complex or something. But either way, it's like, so let's take a little freedom away. Then they'll bring in somebody like Biden right now. Okay, so you've got, I'm going to fix prescription drug prices, and oh, wait a minute. Okay, so he does about like 10 prescription drugs where insulin was important to do, without a doubt. I've got diabetics in my family, and my mom was a diabetic, so I know how expensive that can be. And and unfortunately, she had Medicare covered, I think, some of it somehow. But at any rate, is, okay, she must have had a supplement or something. At any rate, is he does 10 of them. Of how many tens of thousands of prescriptions that are out there that we're being rebilled for. He does 10 of them. He throws us a little bit of breadcrumbs, to make it look good, And then they bring the other guys in to kind of enrich themselves. We had the major insurance companies got caught for their Medicare Advantage, which was actually privatized Medicare. That was signed into law in 2003 by Bush Jr. And so it probably went into effect in 2024. All right. In the last few years, for sure, they've been using quotation marks here, algorithms. Okay. So this is how the scam works. All right. So what they then do is, in Medicare, and keep in mind when this got passed, Republicans had control of the Congress and the White House, I believe. I'd have to look that up to confirm it, but I think so. I could be wrong on that, but at any rate, so this was their fixed Medicare thing, right? And so Medicare is allowing insurance companies to create what's called Medicare Advantage, I think sometimes Medicare Plus plans. All right, so, and people are encouraged to go there because you're going to get benefits you're not getting. So they go to these insurance agents, okay, rather than tell the guy or the senior citizen that, okay, keep your regular Medicare and enroll in the supplemental plan here that help covers the cost of your prescription or picks up what Medicare doesn't. All right. What they do is say, oh, you should come to this Medicare Advantage plan. All right. And I'm willing to bet that the commission that they make off of a Medicare Advantage plan versus a person staying on Medicare, regular Medicare, and doing a supplemental that help covers some stuff, okay, they end up in these Medicare Advantage, Medicare Plus plans. All right. So then what these insurance companies do is they go to the U.S. government, to the Medicare office, and they go, okay, well, this senior citizen's good health, and this was in, oh God, 2019, maybe 2016. It was 2-3 years ago. Okay, so if a senior citizen was healthy, Medicare would then pay that insurance company $12,000 per healthy senior citizen. So the senior citizen is still paying for Medicare every month out of their Social Security check. Right now, it's roughly 165, 170. It goes up every year. So, like if a senior citizen gets $10 a month increase in their Social Security check for cost of living adjustment, they're going to lose $3 to $5 a month because of the increase in Medicare. So the government kind of claws it back, right? But I think next year's going to be like 170, 175, depending upon the income for your Medicare. So senior citizens still paying the Medicare, okay? Plus, depending on the plan they went into. So if they went into one of these insurance plans, they make this really complicated on purpose. So people throw their hands up and try to trust the agent, or throw their hands up when they're filing appeals, okay? And for denied care or delayed care, is they can buy into a bigger plan. And I have one friend spent over $400 a month on a bigger plan, plus his Medicare deduction. All right. So, but when he found out when he got there, he couldn't keep his doctor. He had to change his doctor. And he didn't realize that that's what he enrolled to, was Medicare Advantage. He kind of shrugged his shoulders and just went with it. But either way, so, and what these insurance companies did, they created an algorithm. And they were alleged to have said some senior citizens are sicker than they really are, because the sicker they are and the older they are, the more money they get from Medicare to cover the costs and manage that person's health care. That's sort of the agreement, all right? But whatever money they save, they get to keep, all right? This is where the $140 billion in fraud for 2022 alone. This $140 billion in fraud for 2022 alone for that 1 year. Okay.
That is a crazy number.
Yes, yeah. It is. And they admitted it happened. They called it a billing error or a glitch because of the algorithms. Because the algorithms were making people sicker or had illnesses or whatever, allegedly, that they didn't really have, so they could get more money from Medicare. All right. And the thing with the Medicare Advantage plan is if the patient, the senior citizen, says, okay, my doctor said I need to go get this test done. Okay. The insurance company, 1 out of 4 times, supposedly, will deny it and say no. Okay. There was one woman, I saw her video, where she lost her leg all the way up to her hip because of this. And the doctor's like, my leg hurts, my leg hurts, my leg hurts, my leg hurts. And it's like, okay, they had to fight to get the x-rays. Then they had to fight to get treatment. Okay. And because the insurance companies kept delaying her coverage, denying her coverage, she had to take them to court and get everything done to try to get the bill paid. And had they done what they should have done when the doctor first said, we need to take a look at this and do some additional tests, okay, she lost her leg all the way up to her hip. Okay. If they had caught it right away, they might have been able to treat it and save the whole leg, or maybe only lost a part of the leg, but not all the way up to the hip. And there's story after story after story like that. And some people are dying because of it. It's like they have death panels, but they're using algorithms to create death panels. It's insane. All right. So this is going on right now. Okay. So does the Department of Justice go after the CEOs and executives for fraud? No. Don't hear them talking about it. Okay. And so now the Department of Justice is happy to sue these insurance companies to get that $140 billion back, because they don't want to give it back to us. Okay. That's insane. We're suing them to get money back that they admit that they fraudulently took, or through a billing error alleged. And I call it, in my opinion, is fraud. But so what they do is everybody's looking over at Donald Trump and his fraud case and blah, 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 blah. And in this case, blah, 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 blah. No one's paying attention to this stuff over here that's going on. It's like a deliberate distraction almost. I'm not saying it is, but, nobody's paying attention to it. No, nothing at all. It's insane, Gigi. Insane. I'm supposed to be going old school with UFO stuff, but this is kind of old school. It's like it's all contrived. It's all controlled to a degree. Everything we see to a degree, it's not scripted, but it's kind of controlled. Where I think they'll manipulate somebody, like a politician or whoever. They let them get to where they're going, because these people have, psychiatrists, mind control kind of people that really understand the inner workings of the mind. in the inner workings of his personality, and can really manipulate people to a huge, huge, huge degree. It's insane. But yeah, so some of these politicians might be manipulated and not even realize that's what's going on, and or they'll have someone there feeding them blah 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 all the time talking to them, like who's around them, all the time. Like when Reagan became president, everybody in the UFO conspiracy community in the 80s, and so that's a long time ago. That's old school. We all looked and go, oh, Bush was senior, was formerly the head of the CIA, and he who heads the CIA is a member and or heads Majestic 12, MJ12, Majak 12, call it what you will. And that was the conspiracy then. When Reagan went into office, the UFO conspiracy was, wow, Reagan took Bush as his vice president. Reagan's showing some of the signs of early Alzheimer's, but every time somebody said something, they got demonized in the press. It was a celebrity who said something. Nobody dared to say anything. It just there were people talking to each other mostly. An occasional talk show host bring it up, but you could see that onset of Alzheimer's right there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so he was. I mean, to a degree, they can manipulate some of these people, maybe, but we got to take a break, don't we, Gigi?
Actually, no, we do not. Since we're we don't have any commercials to play, since we're not on the network, we might take like a little break halfway through, but
okay.
Yeah, we can just keep going for now. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just the same. So it's very possible to go into old school. It's all scripted. So they let the Democrats come in and throw out a few breadcrumbs because the masses, the people are getting pissed about it. Okay, and then they'll get everybody pissed at the Democrats. Think about this. Okay, so right now you've got Republicans are having a private commission to make cuts to the budget, and on the table is Social Security and Medicare. Well, you want to fix Medicare, stop the damn fraud, and get the money back. And I bet this fraud was going on, alleged fraud from these insurance companies and these mass that's probably been going on for years. And we're only looking at 2022 right now. It's insane. Oh, then the government, I heard, gave them 2 years to fix the billing issues, by the way. At any rate, so, all right, and then they'll bring in the Republicans once in a while to kind of like pull a little bit back, and they won't just pull a little bit back of what they have, they'll pull more than what they had before, which is where we're at now. That's why we have more billionaires and trillionaires than we ever had before. People are cashing in on this, but it's a lot of greed. Emotions are run amok. But yeah, so they're not going to give up control. I mean, they don't. These corporations don't want to give up control. Old school aliens. I guess that's where we should go, huh? Old school aliens, Gigi.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. All right. So back in the 70s and 80s, there are a lot of different conspiracies out there, and Gigi and I have talked about these before. All right, so there's the one theory where, Adam and Eve was real, and that it probably was very possible. Sure, I could look at that from a science fiction perspective and say, yeah, definitely it's very possible. From a science fiction perspective, I can see that. At any rate, is that Satan, when he appeared to Eve to take the fruit, which wasn't an apple, some kind of fruit, and eat it and give it to her husband to eat for, the knowledge of good and evil and everything else, that he was a snake. And then as a punishment, God removed the snake's arms and legs so it had to slither on its belly for the rest of creation. And a lot of people would say, well, the aliens in the light gray suits look an awful lot like a snake. If you took the eyes and the head and everything else.
Yeah.
You can almost see that to a degree if you're trying to describe something about the closest thing you come to it. So is it possible that, some people believe that Adam and Eve were created by DNA, by God or an alien, and put here, and there's that big debate between and Satan is actually the Greys, and the human aliens, which would be like Christ and all that, are human aliens from other star systems, like Booties or Boteas, things like that. And there's some legend to kind of support that's where he came from. But at any rate, so you remember that Satan said he wanted to be like God. So if Satan is an alien, okay, and you know there's that hive mind mentality, and we're kind of, it looks like we're headed that direction. I'm going to pull immigration into this in a minute. And, um, and God wanted, at one point in the Bible, God looked around and saw that he was alone, and he created man and woman. So there may be something going on there. Because we talk about, you hear it all the time, GTD, DNA manipulation and the hybrids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, so is it possible that Adam and Eve were there in DNA? We also believe there were other people alive on the planet at that time too. So, but let's move forward here a little bit. Okay, so the Greys are a hive mind. Supposedly, this is old school theory, okay, is there's three types of gray aliens, okay, and three different races within the gray alien species. Or some people call them Zeta Reptilians, so I don't know if that's really correct. I don't know, I'm not sure where that came from off the top of my head. Any rate, there's one alien race that's interfering with this planet and trying to turn us into them as a means of conquering us. There's a second alien race that is opposed to what the other one's doing, and that one has some alliances, possibly with some human races. Okay, because they oppose what that one gray alien race is doing. And there's another gray alien race, a third one, that really doesn't care either way. Okay, and you've heard that theory before, haven't you, Gigi?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, that's an old school theory. Excuse me, that's an old school theory. It's going arcing back to the days of like John Anthony West and Jim Mars and people like that. Whether they have brought that up, I'd have to watch and listen to a bunch of stuff over again. It was so long ago. Those guys are so wise,
Yeah.
Anyway,
talk about wisdom, and I'm.
Stanton Friedman wasn't bad either,
Yeah, the only thing with Stanton is his aggressive opposition to the Balbazar situation, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I am so sad that I never got to have a long conversation with Jim Mars or have him on the show. And he, man, just imagine if he was still alive today, he would be tearing it up right now. And
he'd be saying some of the same stuff I'm saying. I bet
that too.
I'm sure he would.
Yeah, absolutely.
I bet he would be. It's very possible. He'd be saying that. It's all orchestrated. And like right now, so you got Republicans right now are wanting to slash Social Security and Medicare. They're not willing to talk about the fraud. All right. And then we got the Democrats, a large percentage of them, have got this open borders thing going on. And it's just massive, massive, massive. I mean, we're talking 10, 12,000 people a day or a week. I think it's a day, 10, 12,000 a day. And that's just turning themselves in. Who knows how many are getting throughout the country. And it's massive. And they're busting them up to the sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. And those cities are going bankrupt because they can't handle it. And they're in hundreds of thousands. It's like 150,000 or something this past spring, summer. We're in New York. It's probably even bigger now. It's just massive. Massive, massive. So here goes, okay, a conspiracy. Not saying this is true. Just put it out there, okay? That the plan was for the Democrats to allow illegal immigration to get really out of hand for a number of reasons. One, collapses our economy, and it will. This kind of immigration is going to destroy the United States' economy. We can't handle it. We don't have the infrastructure, the resources, the infrastructure, and the money to handle it. We just don't. Not at this magnitude. And there's one conspiracy that some of the countries in South America, Central America, not including Panama. They're kind of like caught in the middle. But Mexico would be included in the first group that are encouraging people to come to migrate from there and other countries around the world as well. Their governments are encouraging people to migrate to the U.S. and make that journey through Mexico, because you can't just fly in the United States. Because you come flying in and come off a boat, passport, you know. So, and the countries are encouraging to do this. Okay, the president of Mexico last month or month before, we were giving a bunch of money to, I don't know, Ukraine, I guess, and they're going, you should give us that money, and then he throws this number out there. I don't think it was 350 million. I think it's 350 billion dollars that we should give Mexico and some of the countries in South America and Central America instead of spending money on these wars. And he actually threw the number out. I think it was 350 billion. It might have been 350 million, but I think it was billion. And it's like we're being extorted for money, And if you don't give us money, this is what's going to happen to you. I don't know, but I don't know how much truth there is to that. There might be a little bit to it, but I don't know. So, all right, so the Republicans are going to come in eventually, all right, and a number of things could happen with this migration. Keep in mind that the Greys are a hive mind, all right? We need to keep that in mind. The Greys are a hive mind. And supposedly there are humans out there that are not a hive mind. They're kind of like us, but a lot taller, and there are also various races of humans like we have here on Earth. All right, so so the Republicans will come in, and this is going on all over the world. It's not just the United States. There are countries in Europe, the Netherlands, the UK, Ireland. God, there's a bunch of countries having the same problem we are. Not as bad as we are right now, but they're having still having the same similar problem. It's massive migration of people everywhere. So these politicians, be it Europe or the United States, they could come in and go, you know what? To help control this mass flux of illegal immigrants and all these crimes that are going on, the biochip is already in Europe, is already in use, okay, in parts of Europe. So it's already in use. All right. There may be something coming along we haven't seen yet, similar to it. We just haven't seen the tech yet, the technology for it. But to say, okay, well, we're going to biochip everybody so we can keep track of all these illegal immigrants. And the United States could do the same thing. So let's say the Democrats go out, Republicans come in and go, oh, this is so terrible. Although they're the ones that help make it that way because they've been denying funding up until recently for border security. They keep shooting it down. It's like they're helping the problem get out of hand. It's kind of bizarre. So, but now all of a sudden they're shooting for it. But at the time here, they tied into money for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan to help with their militaries. But so there's an excuse to put in a biochip. And in my opinion, anyone taking that type of biochip for the tracking purposes, and I'll tie this in, I believe the scripture says it too, whether it's a biochip or something akin to it, that's a step, in my opinion, toward a hive mind. Okay? So, be it the mark of the beast or whatever you want to call it, it's still a step toward a hive mind. And if Satan is indeed a type of hybrid gray alien, and what he wants to be is as God, which is like the top hive mind, and here's a lower hive mind. I don't know if you're following me or not, Gigi.
Yeah, right here.
Okay, so the one hive mind's rebelling against the other hive mind. Okay? And he wants to be like the original big hive mind, God. So, and I'm not saying God's a hive mind either, because there seems to be some individuality there. And I think that Adam and Eve and everybody else was the individuality, the freedom of free will. Free will. It was very important. And this is what we're talking about, free will here. And so the hive mind, if we institute that biochip into our bodies, that's a step toward the hive mind and the Greys. That's a real step in that direction. There are some people that believe that, in the Bible it says that Satan stands before God and accuses man. It doesn't say what he accuses of. It doesn't. What if Satan stands there and goes to God, look at the people of the earth, man. They're all taking this biochip, man. Therefore, they're evolving toward a hive mind, and therefore the Earth and her inhabitants are ours because they're evolving toward a hive mind versus evolving toward, if you go with Christ being a human alien, you do that. Um, excuse me. Other than the human lines where people have individuality and they're not part of a hive mind. And, you know, have the Greys, this is a theory that's been out there for a long time, been fooling with our timeline, our history, for thousands of years, trying to turn us into them as a means of conquering. Because their warfare is going to be far different than the warfare that we have because of how advanced they are.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so their warfare is going to be totally different than ours. And again, I'm not saying any of this is true, right? This is just one of the bigger theories that are out there. It's been out there for decades. Gigi, you've heard a lot of this stuff before, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been doing this for 8 years or 7 years.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I forgot. This is tomorrow marks the 7-year anniversary of the show.
Oh, wow.
I forgot about that.
Congratulations.
But yeah. And yeah, just quick comment on something you said like 20 minutes ago. You're talking about the snake and man, wouldn't that suck ass to be a snake? What a shitty existence. You can't manipulate, you don't have arms or legs to manipulate anything. You just have your face. That's it.
Yeah, you just slither around. You can be deadly as hell, though. Excuse my language. You can be real deadly, though. You get bit by some of those things, man. It'll kill you.
Yep. And, but yeah, and then also I was, this stand-up comedian did this bit about the Ten Commandments, and it definitely made me think a little bit. 'Cause, the Ten Commandments are basically just a guideline, or more like a set of rules, really, right? And so you think about it, like what's the worst thing? What's like the number one rule? What's the worst thing you can do to somebody, right? Kill them, right? So you think that would be the first rule, except that's not the first rule. It's the first rule is, I am the Lord your God. Like, okay, fair enough. All right, so it'll probably be the second rule then, but it's not the second one either. The second one is, there are no other gods except me. Okay, that's a weird rule. And then the third rule is basically like, don't even carve a tree to look like another god because there's totally no other gods. It's like, sounds to me like there's a bunch of other gods that you don't want us to know about. But
yeah, or it's some people believe that Christ, that is okay, if there was alien contamination and interference, okay, that Christ came and blah 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 with his life. I shouldn't say blah blah blah, it's very disrespectful. Sorry, Lord. Okay, so all right, so Christ came, and when Christ was born, died, resurrected, and rose to heaven, okay, what that did in the Old Testament, this ties in a little bit to Christianity. I'm not going to say evangelicals because that's a bad term. I don't like that word. I never have. Is Christ brought an end to animal sacrifice, okay, because he was the Messiah or Mashiach. And yes, he probably had olive skin, okay, like Jesus wasn't white and blonde hair and blue-eyed. All right, so he probably had olive skin. At any rate, so he brought an end to animal sacrifice. And if you're trying to ease a population or a species out of an alien contamination and interference, and do it in a gradual way without for whatever reason they did it, to do something like that, because Christ brought an end to animal sacrifice and religious laws like that the Pharisees were imposing, now we have our modern day Pharisees running around all over the place, especially in Washington D.C. and our state capitals as politicians. Christ drove the money changers out of the temple. Well, I grant our state and national capitals aren't temples of God. They're still a temple of our government. Not as a god, but they're still a sacred place. And we need to drive those money changers out of there. Seriously, that's like bad. But anyway, so they could take this migrant excuse to biochip and or join it with your ID and your healthcare data. It connects into a network. You could do any other financial, your ID thing. They might decide to implement biochipping the migrants first, and then anybody who's incarcerated and wants to go on probation or parole, they could make a condition of their probation or parole to microchip them. That's a possibility, or something akin to it. Again, we haven't seen yet. And um, I'm against microchipping anybody. Period. I got a big problem with illegal immigration. It needs to stop. But I'm not going to force a microchip on those people. I just no. I don't think we should do that. Absolutely not. We cannot allow that, because that, to me, that's a step toward a hive mind, because it's more control. Those microchips are going to probably emit a Bluetooth signal. Your cell phone receives a Bluetooth signal, and that is connected to the cell phone towers, which can track you via GPS. And all phones have GPS now. Even the old school style flip ones that you push, you can buy now. And for somebody who wants simplicity, those are out there. Even those have GPS in them. They all do. And it's that tracking. It's more of a step toward a hive mind. And, one of the other conspiracy theories is that, it was two spacecrafts that clipped each other in an electrical storm, or because we're experimenting with microwave transmissions is the other part of that one. So it's one of those two. They clipped each other, and one crashed in one location, one crashed in the other, and then we retrieved both crashes, and there were survivors, and on the crash, like one or two survivors. And allegedly, it's an old school conspiracy theory. The humans came down, the human aliens, like in Placidias, Taurus, Moose, or wherever they're from. Okay, I don't know if they're from those locations. All right, supposedly came down, and they had a secret meeting in the desert with the U.S. government, and they requested, they wanted to retrieve the crashed ships, and they wanted the dead alien bodies, okay, as evidence to bring to some court somewhere, out there. And they wanted that evidence. And the U.S. government said, well, we'll give you that evidence in exchange for some of that technology in the ship that you're flying right there. And the human aliens, these guys are probably like 7 foot tall or whatever. They're not talking necessarily about the Nordics, could be, but it might have been other people involved, more than one, because I think there were 2 ambassadors. And the ambassadors said, no, we can't do that. We have laws in place, which is strangely similar to Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek of non-interference with developing worlds. It's kind of that same thing,
right?
Same vibe.
Yeah.
That no, we can't do that. We have laws in place. So it sounds like they do have rules they have to live by. So they're like, well, we can't do that. So the U.S. government had snipers posted, shot and killed the U.S. ambassadors, and stole the spacecraft so they could back engineer it, allegedly. This is one of the conspiracy theories out there. Don't know if it's true or not, but it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And because the U.S. government was afraid for what they did, they thought, well, murdering those ambassadors could be an act of war. And supposedly, again, this one may or may not be true, is that the U.S. government cut a deal with the Greys. Okay, as the Greys said, well, we will protect you from these other people because you killed their ambassadors and stole the craft, and we'll protect you from them. Form an alliance with us, and we'll give you some of our technology, and you have to allow us to continue abducting humans off the planet, or from your country, whatever. And the government said, well, okay, we'll do that, but we want a list of everybody that you're abducting. And supposedly the Greys agreed to that. Okay, so years passed by.
And now, just to clarify, that was the specific agreement that's allegedly during Eisenhower's administration.
I think so.
Is that the one? Yeah. Okay.
I think so. And because it was shortly after Roswell. So whoever was president in 47, 48, 49, right in there. Was that Eisenhower?
I mean, I know Eisenhower, the
We
legend
can
goes
Google
it was Eisenhower that made like the deal with the aliens.
The deal.
I wonder if that's the same deal that included that part of the deal.
Yeah, that could be it. It could have been Eisenhower, yeah. And so that sounds right. Eisenhower sounds right. Any rate, so, but then the Greys never gave the promised technology. What little they gave us wasn't really, really what everyone was expecting if they got anything. And they never provided a complete, accurate list of who they're abducting. But they continued the abductions. And right about that same time frame, we need to remember that UFO sightings suddenly shot up. Doesn't it kind of feel like it history-wise? All of a sudden, UFO sightings shot up right in that time era, shortly after that.
Yeah.
And so I bet so is it possible that the Greys were going around going, okay, we got a short window here, right, of opportunity. So they're grabbing as many people as they can and manipulating DNA, taking testing, whatever it is they're doing. In this case, if they're trying to turn us into them, they're probably trying to manipulate DNA. Maybe not. Or manipulate the mind. So, or both, or everything. So that suddenly shot up. So yeah, we had a lot of UFO sightings for a long time in like the 50s and 60s and 70s. I saw UFOs in the 70s, up close, even in the 60s. I had that one where I saw it close enough to throw a rock at, and, but yeah, so UFO sightings shot up. So were the Greys suddenly doing a lot of abductions because they knew the windows, their time frame was closing? I don't know if that really makes any sense or not, though, but.
Yeah, it does, but I think there's some other factors though too. I mean, another thing that coincides with the rapid rise in UFO sightings in the late 40s and 50s was the use of atomic and nuclear weapons.
Yep.
As soon as we started firing those off, bam, UFOs are there. Now, however, there's the just now becoming re-famous UFO retrieval that happened in Italy in 1933 that America was fully aware of, and they eventually apparently got the craft. David Grush actually just talked about this.
Okay.
That's the one example he's willing to talk about for a couple of reasons, just representing how long this cover-up has been going on by the American government specifically. That the American government was involved in the 1933 crash retrieval from Italy.
Wow.
Yeah, and he does. I mean, just from his sources that he interviewed while he was working with Arrow, just those people are aware of incidents well before that, even as well. But of course, we've got UFO sightings going back. I mean, Christopher Columbus. We've got ancient paintings from the 100 ADs. It just goes all the way back.
You've got sketches that are tens of thousands of years old inside a rock.
Right. Yeah.
Seriously. And so, yeah, they've been around for a long, long time. It just seemed there was like an uptick at that time period, but maybe I'm wrong on it. But yeah, so
yeah, there definitely was, and I think. I definitely think the nuclear, us messing around with nuclear stuff definitely, and there's, string theorists and quantum physicists and whatnot that, talk about how not only would we have gained the attention of, other civilizations that have had access to, that's just a big, like, hey, look what we're doing kind of thing. But also that would reverberate into other dimensions, that caliber of vibration and explosion. So not only extraterrestrial beings, but interdimensional as well.
Yeah.
And because, if you think about it, if we, let's say like there's just the northwest corner of America, no humans were allowed to live there, and it was only like chimpanzees, and that's their territory, and we just don't pay attention. We leave them alone. They don't come over to our area. And then all of a sudden, we start hearing a bunch of explosions over there. We're going to go check it out, see what's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
I'm sure they detected that. And they got skin if you're traveling in space, they got to be traveling either. They're folding space. or they're jumping interdimensionally, or something. Plus you have to keep a time consistency in there. From one to the other, so you're not traveling in time. To where you shouldn't go.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, but so that main theory is that the Greys are trying to turn us into them, and there's human aliens out there that are trying to stop it and prevent it. But when you look at everything going on politically across the world, these mass migrations, you got these biochips rolling out, you got, people are like positioning themselves at corporate, I'm going to be this high in the hive mind. No, I'm going to be this in part of control of the hive mind, and for me, screw you people, I want my independent thought. I don't want to be part of some hive mind. I'm not going to hook my brain into some Neuralink, Is that what they call that, Neuralinks?
I mean, that's where Neuralink could end up, is something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of, I don't want to go that direction personally myself, but
especially since I feel like the untapped potential of human mind and consciousness. I think there's already a subconscious hive mind kind of going on. When you look at things like morphic resonance, or from for example, we often credit we credit Thomas Edison for inventing the light bulb, but little do people know there were 4 other people that within a few weeks of Edison patenting the light bulb in other countries in the other part of the world, that these people had no idea about each other, that spoke different languages, just so happened to invent the same thing at the same time, and within a couple of weeks apart. So I think if we really needed to be a hive mind, there's some untapped potential that we could do that if we wanted to, but to force.
Is it possible that the ideas were planted by aliens across the planet, and hopefully one of them would catch it and make it happen?
Right. Yeah.
The idea was planted by aliens and multiple people, and they're just waiting to see who's going to catch it first and do something with it. Is that possible? That's another possibility too. There's a lot of things we don't know. I mean, look at those tracks he just found in New Mexico. They're tens of thousands of years old. That in that dry lake bed. Thankfully, it's in a national park, so they can't be destroyed. But they're tens of thousands of years old, and they predate the Native Americans. Native Americans claim it's their ancestors, and it's possible. Sure, maybe. It's possible. But it also could be a race of people that don't exist anymore. Look at was it the Solarians over in France, Spain area?
Yeah, I think they're called something like that. Yeah, but yeah.
I might be mispronouncing the Solarian name. It might be something else, but it's something like that. That we have evidence, possibly, that they were up along the Canadian coast and North American coast, predating, tens of thousands of years before they thought anybody was over here.
Yeah, and if you want to go deep, there's Michael Cramo's book, Forbidden Archaeology. Actually, I'm not even sure if it's in the book. It might have been a later discovery, but he uncovered an archaeological find that happened in, I believe it was Ohio. They were digging for coal, mining coal, and underneath a layer of undisturbed rock, rather, meaning, that shit's been there for a long-ass time. That shit was undisturbed for, I believe it was 800,000 years. So that layer is 800,000 years old. Underneath that layer, they found a couple little trinkets and little knickknacks that were clearly man-made, but more interestingly, they found a couple of coins, like currency. On one side was a humanoid, like a human head,
right.
And on the other side it looked like some sort of hieroglyphic symbol-based writing, but it was so far removed from what there's no way to translate it. There's no reference, no point of reference to translate it. But it's so, and we're talking, it was either 80 80,000 years or 800,000. I can't remember. It was a
Oh,
long.
80 sounds about right.
It might, but there's another discovery that was a few 100,000 years old. That's also interesting. But either way, even if it's only 80,000 years, that means you have math, you have you have the wisdom of economy, you have a society, you have a way to mass manufacture these things. That implies a lot of things happening.
Yeah. And what country was that in again?
North America. That was found in Ohio, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, and there's a thing I saw on the History Channel on YouTube the other day. It wasn't Graham Hancock, though he's fairly good. It was somebody else. I can't think of the guy's name off the top of my head. And he's been on a number of these type of podcasts. He was going over the Jewish hieroglyphs that were found in the mounds up in Ohio. And they were written in ancient Hebrew. And they found tablets and stuff in etching on rock that was written in ancient Hebrew, which had been like 700 or 800 years ago. Up around Ohio in one of the mounds. They found some stuff like Cedar, Kentucky, New Mexico, but they had various locations where they found ancient Hebrew writings that, like 700, 800 years old. It's like, wow, that's like, okay. And there's always that theory that some of the Native Americans were part of the lost tribe of Israel. And, or lost tribes of Israel. And to think that I had to say to that when I watched whatever it was on History Channel was, okay, and they interviewed some of the Native Americans who said, well, yeah, we are the lost tribe of Israel, and they're the Native Americans of that tribe, and they believe that. And I was kind of like, okay, cool. Let us draw your DNA, and let's run a DNA and a gnome, because a gnome is a little deeper than a DNA. You want to run the DNA for both sides of the family, and you want to do a gnome. Which goes way down. A gnome can tell if somebody has a little Neanderthal in them. Ozzy Osbourne learned that because he had a gnome research test, took part in a gnome research study. It's real probably expensive to get a gnome test done. That's pretty an accurate thing. So, but to draw DNA, do the DNA sequencing for both, both sides of the family, mother, father, and do a gnome. And then take that and run a test on get several Native Americans, not just one or two people, do a bunch of them, and do a bunch of Israelis, okay? And you come closest to being people that were actually in the region 2,000-3,000 years ago, or 700-800 years ago, and run a DNA and a gnome on them. And let's compare the two and see if there's any relationship or not.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Who knows? If there is, cool. If there's not, cool.
Yeah, it's worth going for. It
still doesn't mean a whole lot. And I'm just like, dude, run a gnome on that. But Scott Walter.
Scott Walter, yeah, okay.
That's what I'm thinking, Scott Walter. And I wanted to go into his Twitter feed and go, just watch this, man. Why don't you do a DNA and a gnome on the Native Americans and then run it against the Israelis?
Yeah, and that's another guy. He's almost been on the show a few times for something always. We got to get Scott on here. But before it slips my mind, there's another discovery along with what we're talking about. Also from this one, from Michael Cramo. Not sure. I think this was also after Forbidden Archaeology. It was on one of his other books, but we've talked about it with him on my show a couple of times, and it was a discovery again in North America, again underneath a layer of undisturbed rock. Now, this layer of undisturbed rock was around 250,000 years old. 250,000 years old. Now, to preface this, in the Vedas, or in the Puranas more specifically, in India's ancient religious historical, that's like the history section of their religious text, the Puranas. And in there, they specifically they describe this part of the world. It's very clear they're talking about North America, and they're talking about how they had established civilizations. They had branched out of India and had spots all over the world, and one of them was in North America, and they specifically, they narrow it down to around 250,000 years ago is when they claim to have had a pretty major settlement here on this continent. And now we have, but there's this discovery underneath this layer of rock that's about 250,000 years old, right when the Indians said it was. They found an ancient, like a golden bell, like a bell trinket that had I forget which god or goddess it was, but it's a very common depicted goddess, a very specific god that's all over the Vedas and the Puranas. And I forget the god's name, but and it's still used today in India tradition. And so this was found. It's clearly an India artifact, a religious Indian artifact, 250,000 years old in I believe it was New Mexico, is where it was found. It just all lines up. I mean, that can't just be coincidence right there.
It's good that you brought that all up, because that bring us back to where we started, was with Adam and Eve. A lot of, they're the first man and woman, but other people in Christianity movement, and even in the Protestant, believe that outside of the Garden of Eden, there were other people alive on the planet and existing. A lot of Christians believe that there are other people existing on the planet.
Yeah.
And Gigi tonight is talking about that, going, we have civilizations going back tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. Gobekli Tepe is another good one, but Gobekli Tepe. I can't basically go Gobekli Tepe. Oh man,
yeah.
That is later.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister.
Gobekli Tepe. Yeah, man. But the thing is, back at time travel, I want to go forward, not back.
Yeah. And now
go forward, not back.
And now they found that very recently, like within the last couple of months, Graham Hancock and the first episode of his documentary series on Netflix is about the Gudang Padang pyramid. And I feel like he should have put that in a different. I don't think that should have been the first episode, but whatever. He went with that one. And it's been speculated that thing is at least about 20,000 years old, but there wasn't really. Yeah. There's some suggestion to it, but not like solid smoking gun evidence. But as of a couple months ago, they now know. They know that it's at least 25,000 years old, and it might be 40,000 years old.
Yeah, and as DNA advances in gnome research, the Iceman found up in the mountains in Europe there, right at the border between two countries, they did a drawing of them maybe 10 years ago, and they basically had them, lighter skinned and blah, 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 blah. And then they came back and they redid the DNA, and his skin was was darker than what they thought it was originally on the original DNA test they did, because they were able to go deeper. Their skin was probably more darker. It probably had brown eyes, and it really almost changed because the skin tone changed. So, excuse me, so his origin changed. So as science moves forward in that respect, I won't do one of those DNA research things, though, because I don't want my DNA out there getting sold and traded,
Yeah, you don't know what they're doing with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what they're doing with that, man. You really don't. But, yeah, like I said, with the gray alien hive mind thing is, look at everything that's moving that direction. They're like, we got that chip that we saw on 60 Minutes a couple of years ago that can detect viruses. It's a gel chip that can transmit the Bluetooth signal, which the phone can receive and communicate back. You've got where in our politics, where we're being told, well, you're either for Trump or against Trump, either for Biden or against Biden. The people in the middle are just kind of like going, well, wait a minute. And there are the extremes on both ends. And it just feels so orchestrated that we can't get anybody decent to actually run for office and do something. Various offices, Senate, Congress, the White House. You can't get anybody decent that'll do anything. and they
Yeah.
just keep us divided and keep us at war. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean,
and
I think one thing that should somehow be drafted into legislature is, I mean, it's just an idea, a step in the right direction. I think, first of all, the whole concept of having one president as the commander in chief, that whole idea is ridiculous. One person in charge? No. But if you are going to go with one person being a leader, the requirement for being a president should be that you do not want to be the president. And by becoming an American citizen, you agree that if the people elect you, you have to be the president if you don't want to. But if you want to be the president, then you are not allowed to be the president.
that'd be a good one.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one. I just don't, you know, none of this. It's like, 'cause I'm 67 almost, so I've seen a lot, and over the years in politics and everything else, and the UFO community as well. And it's like, you know, you just keep looking at it. It's like repeat. It's like 37% of the new homeless people are baby boomers, man, people my age. And, we've lived through multiple recessions, not just one, multiple recessions, some of them big ones, okay? And when these recessions hit, depending upon the person, some people were lucky, a lot of people weren't, where you lose the job that you have because of recession, you get laid off, all right? Then when they hire back, okay, so you're losing your seniority and everything else, right? So let's say you're 32 years old, 35. You hit the recessions in the 80s. All of a sudden you get laid off. Then, then you're losing your seniority, you're losing your health care, you're losing all your benefits, everything. They've already taken your pension and turn them into 401ks. All of a sudden now you're stuck with HMOs for your health care, where you can't pick your doctor and everything else. Started all the crap we're going through now. We talked about earlier. That all happened, and when you got hired back in, you went back to work at a lower wage than you had before you got laid off, and you lost your seniority. And that happened to a lot of people a number of times. And a lot of these people could not afford to set aside money in a 401k because they were living check to check. 62, I think it was 67% of the people in the United States are now living paycheck to paycheck. It's become the norm. That's just like mind-boggling. And excuse me. But yeah, so a lot of the baby boomers are now becoming, not a lot of them, but some of them are becoming homeless, and they're not drug addicts, they're not alcoholics. They might be even in a few months to numb the emotional, physical pain of living on the street, but they can't afford the rent. The average Social Security check, supposedly, I think it's probably lower, is around $1,600, give or take. So if you subtract, the $165 out of there for your Medicare, and then probably at least another 150 for the supplemental to pick up what Medicare doesn't to help you cover the cost of prescriptions. Okay, you already lost that much. The average one-bedroom apartment right now in the United States is running between 1,200 and 1,400 a month. Okay, for an apartment. All right, and by the time you subtract the Medicare supplemental plan, and then you got to add in a cell phone service. So you get lucky to get something for $35 a month. But you do the math, and it ain't long until they don't even have enough money to cover the rent, let alone provide food, keep a car on the road, keep fuel in it, pay whatever deductibles there are for their medications. And it's insane. So more and more baby boomers are going homeless because they didn't have a savings, because they went through multiple recessions. Some that had 401ks had to cash them in at some point, a lot of them. The only advantage some of them have is they own their own home. But if boomers that didn't buy a home, they're screwed right now, like big time. So yeah, that problem's going to get really bad. But so I don't know. It's just crazy, crazy nuts. And Is that Jamie ZJ in chat? Oh, well, thank you for tuning in tonight.
Yeah, what's up, Jay? What's up, Sylvain? Good to see you. And
Oh,
randomly, I can't remember the acronym. I'd have to look at my phone, but I've missed several calls from like the. I had to look up who it was, and it was the like the nat basically the American Embassy for the Islamic community, like the National Islamic whatever in Washington D.C., like the home of operations in North America for for Islam, and
oh,
I'm not sure why they're trying to call me. And then you know who else I've missed a couple of calls from is around this same time too is NASIC, the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. I've missed a couple of calls from there. So I don't know what's going on.
oh, wow. That was just recently here?
Yeah, it was about 3 weeks ago. Yep.
Oh, wow. I got your number, Gigi.
And hey, what's up, Rocker? Good to see you. Good to see
Hey,
you.
Rocker. Oh, man. Yeah, they got your number, Gigi. You're in trouble. You know. Um, yeah, I don't know, it's just so crazy. I think a lot of this is all just orchestrated, man. All the politics and stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, seriously. An 80-some-year-old guy up against a guy who's almost 80, who's got all these issues going on. It's like, there's no way they could be polling the way they're polling. Either both polling poorly, but there's no way it doesn't make any sense to me. It's just like,
Yeah.
what makes sense in that? I think we're being manipulated.
Oh, and by the way, you know how quite often we, you and me, have told the audience to check out that Hacking Democracy documentary, right?
Yeah.
And however, have you seen this? Just came out like a year or two ago, last year. It's a documentary called 2,000 Mules. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah, that got shot down really bad as being a lot of BS, in my opinion.
I'd
It did. Well, they ran into problems because when I know what it is they supposedly track people's cell phones just because they bought the data. Right there is like, what the hell are you spying on people? So they're tracking cell phones. And Bill Barr looked into this, the former Attorney General Trump hates right now. But his best friend for a long time. You know, oh, we can't indict a sitting president. So, at any rate, that was Bill Barr. Um, he looked into that 2,000 mule claim before the film came out because it came out on his desk or whatever. And so they personally looked into it during the whole aftermath of the 2020 election. Before Biden got sworn in and before Barr resigned. And they looked into it and started tracking some of these cell phones. And pretty much they're all just nonsense. There was one guy that, or a group of guys, okay, but somewhere, I think a couple of them were on there more often, that kept driving past these drop boxes like 2 or 3 times a day, sometimes 4. Well, yeah, they were. The guy owned a construction company, and he had 2 construction sites he was managing, and he's transporting workers from one to the other. And then they all go out to get lunch and things like that. So they'd be driving like a crew cab pickup truck, and they got like 3 guys in the back seat, 1 guy in the front seat, so they got 5 people, and maybe somebody sitting in the back of the truck who's got a cap on so they don't get seen by the cops. And they're sitting in those trucks driving by those things because they're going from one site to another. It was insane. Or they got a delivery. You ever see a bike messenger? They ride the bikes.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. Years ago they had pagers. Now they got cell phones. And so yeah, there are a lot of cell phones going past these drop boxes repeatedly, and all of them are putting them much nonchalant. And then the one guy they had, he dropped off 3 ballots. He dropped off his ballot, his wife's ballot, and his father's ballot, who was elderly and housebound. Okay, which the guy was legally allowed to do that, and I think it happened in Georgia. So that's what Barr found because they looked into the allegations.
Yeah.
And
Well, I don't know. I'd have to look into that into the rebuttals myself because I mean, because there's not only the cell phone data, but I mean, there's the footage of the people dumping in 30
yeah, that got
envelopes.
dude. Some of those they're still people dumping stuff in these things, like 30 of them. You know what they're dumping in? A FedEx box, a UPS box. It's not even a ballot box.
Well, amount of
I've seen clips.
the footage I
I've seen,
saw, I mean, it was definitely ballot boxes. And
yeah, and the
I
footage
don't
I
know.
saw was like a FedEx box or something. You could hardly see the word FedEx on it, but it was the design of the box was part of it. The design of the box was like a FedEx box or UPS box. It wasn't the same design as the ballot box. The design was different of the actual box that was getting dropped in.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't, because I paid
yeah, I don't.
attention to that when I watched it. I didn't notice any FedEx boxes
Here's
there, but
yeah,
I,
here's here's well FedEx UPS, but it was a mail drop. Um, Here's another thing. Okay, so he's saying there were 2,000 people doing this, right? Okay,
well, and
I'll
that
tell you,
was the other thing was the I
he
forget
ain't gonna get 2,000 people involved. Somebody's gonna,
the term for it, but it was they only used like the top 5% of like extreme cases where they were doing incredible numbers of drive-bys. Like they filtered out like 95% of people that more than likely were doing the same
well,
routine, but they only
and
took
again,
the
you're
top
talking about something
5%.
that's streaming. So who's to say after all this flack they got that they didn't do an edit and redid the thing a little bit and re-uploaded it? Who knows? To try and get away from some of these rebuttals. But my other problem is it's 2,000 people. Out of 2,000 people, you're going to find 2,000 people are going to keep your mouth shut that aren't in the military, the top secret security clearance. Okay, that's going to go out and do this. Somebody's going to talk. Someone's going to talk. To me, the whole thing is about as ridiculous as I don't know what state it was. It was somewhere I think in the Midwest. They alleged buses were driving from Vermont to New Hampshire, and they brought in 30,000 or 50,000 votes, and people were riding in buses, and I'm like, okay, well, okay, you only fit 100 people in a bus, and maybe 50, whatever. Okay, you're talking about a line of buses coming out of Vermont or whatever. I don't know what state it was. I can't remember. I was using that as a hypothetical, and driving down the freeway or the back roads, people are going to notice these buses, man, loaded with people. The buses are going to pull up to the back. They're going to get out of the buses and go vote and get back in. I saw no video at all of that backed up that kind of claim. At least not something that actually was pointing to it.
Well, they
You
didn't.
know,
Well, they didn't make that claim in the document. Did you see the documentary?
I've seen clips of it, and I'll be honest with you, I got better things to do with my time. I would rather watch a Scott Walter thing or a Graham Hancock thing before I'd watch that thing.
Yeah. Oh
You
well,
know,
I would too. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I would much rather do that or watch maybe Jim Marr or John Anthony West thing, than watch that. I mean, I look at the guy that did that. Isn't he like a real pro-Trump supporter, like massive?
Uh, yeah. I don't know. You're talking about like the
The
executive
guy that,
producer or the?
yeah, the producer, the director, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about the
Yeah.
producer,
I
but
don't. Yeah. When someone like that pops up on the radar, one of the first things I'll do, I don't do it very often anymore, but I'll go look at like their social media, X, formerly known as Twitter feed, and I'm going to look and see what they're posting, what they're commenting. I'm going to look at see what content they're actually liking, and I'm going to look and see who they're following, and I might look and see who's following them to a degree. I'll just glance at it,
yeah, that's a good
and
thing to do. Yeah.
yeah, I'll just glance at it because, okay, well, who the hell is this person? Okay, well, he's involved with this, he's supporting this, he's supporting that. That stuff is bonkers and crazy, and so and if somebody's, and you get this more on the extreme right than the left, but you get it on the left as well, but you get more of it on the right, and extreme right side. Both do it. Just one does it more, in my opinion. Yeah, and I see them going off on the extreme right, things. It's like, you know, and I don't know if this guy did that, but when I see somebody going, Michelle Obama was a man, and blah blah blah, it's like, stop it, people. Um, it's like there's a mime out there now in the White House of Joe Biden's Christmas decorations, and they video photoshopped in, uh, people dancing for like a pride parade or something or other. And you can tell it's Photoshop because you got one guy stepping from behind a beam that runs vertical per wall, and there's a wall of windows. And the beam is probably not more than 10 inches at the most wide. And this guy steps out from behind it all of a sudden, and you can see the little black shadow holding the Photoshop. They got, and they're dancing through the Christmas decorations. There's a couple of those Photoshopped. And then there's one where there's 3 Easter bunnies on the front lawn. Now, we don't know if it's the Biden administration or if it's Trump or if it's Obama. Who knows? The 3 Easter bunny guys dressed up in Easter bunnies, or women, whatever, dressed as Easter bunnies. And then they got the Grimace or something. It's some big giant furry thing from, I think, a hockey team. And he's over there doing the thing and boinging there's a term they use for it, boinging his butt up and down in his costume. And, which I could see if he's at a game, I think it's a hockey thing, where it's a turn on, kiss my behind, we just got to go, or whatever. So he's doing that kind of dance thing with his butt bouncing up and down. And they're saying, look what's going on at the White House. This woke stuff's got to stop. It's like, knock it off. Stop photoshopping stuff,
Yeah, and that, I mean, not only Photoshop, but but the deep fake stuff that they're able to do now, it's already, being able to tell what's real and what's not is going to be a huge problem. I mean, it already is, but especially in just like 2 or 3 years from now, it's. Now there are some, when it comes to deep fake, there are some algorithms that there are ways to tell if it's deep faked to a degree, but it's very expensive and very time. It's just going to be a huge problem. But now, one thing I do want to jump back to is, we've mentioned Jim Mars a few times throughout this show, and like I was saying before, I went down just a good old fashioned Jim Mars deep dive a couple weeks ago. Watched a few lectures, which surprisingly, I used to watch a lot of his good lectures on YouTube. Back when he was still alive, and like 5-6 years ago, and I had a playlist, saved on YouTube for Jim Mars lectures, and just about all of them have been taken down. Wow. I thought that was interesting. So I had to go to.
How current is some of the stuff that he said back then to today?
Oh, I mean, just nailed it on the head. Yeah.
He's dead on.
And that's why I said earlier, like, man, if he was just still alive today, he would be the most fascinating person to be listening to right now. And
there's a guy I know that sounds just like Jim Mars. It's a Western author, Ralph Cotton. I've talked to him a number of times on the phone, and go to his website, ralphcotton.com. At any rate, and he sounds just like Jim Mars, man. It's bizarre. It's truly, truly bizarre. So, it's totally bizarre, but they sound exactly alike. It's just really bizarre. They sound exactly alike. It's just crazy. But yeah, it's those people, we forget a lot of the people who paved the way for the people that are out there now. I expect when we get the disclosure thing, it's going to be laced with lies and deceit and watered down, like that article said. And that Lockheed Martin is more or less lobbying, in my opinion, to get it watered down. Speaks volumes.
Yeah. And, if anybody's, they're the prime candidate for trying to knock that down is somebody like Lockheed, because they're the ones getting the contracts and have been since the 30s and 40s, or whatever name they had back. It's the same continuation, the same legacy of people, whether it's Lockheed or Raytheon. And this is another interesting problem that's a problem for them, which is just another of the myriad of reasons why they would want to keep disclosure from happening, is on a free market business level. Once it is shown, if it is shown that, essentially all this reverse engineering and retrieval programs, these unacknowledged SAPs, are, once it's been proven that they are essentially illegal, they have been illegally, kept secret, like illegally, confidential. That means that all of the defense contractors that are getting these contracts, where it's kind of like a monopoly sort of deal, where they're going to retroactively be able to say, like, well, hey, for the last 90 years, they've had a monopoly on all these defense contracts regarding this technology. So somebody did the math on this. It's like, they would owe hundreds of billions of dollars to the other defense contractors who should have had a fair chance of getting those contracts. And they would be in, that could ruin those companies if it comes. So, and that's just a pure business standpoint that nobody's really talked about.
I think it was Blanchard, but I might be wrong in the last name. He's a Republican. So, when they were talking about this back engineered technology, he was like, we need to give that to the corporations. Those were pretty much his exact words. We need to give it to the corporations. It's like, dude, the corporate state has enough with us already, and, they say they probably got it already, like you're saying, Gigi. They got it already, but, we need, electrokinetic energy, solar power become obsolete. However, is electrokinetic energy dangerous, like explosion-wise? So, if we're using electrokinetic energy, is it possible that, well, we can't really have it in our cars, we can't use it to power the houses because it's akin to having a miniature nuclear warhead or something, or an neutrino bomb. Oh, I shouldn't have said that word. I'm sorry, Gigi.
Oh, it's all right.
Censored.
Bomb, ba, bomb, 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 bomb. There we go.
Yeah. Oh, my word. That's a little. Oh man, that word. Those two words together that I just said was something that. They'll listen for those two words.
Yeah.
Oklahoma. Oklahoma. At any rate, that was a great musical, Oklahoma. Stop right there. So people are going to back up and listen to this one. Well, what did he say?
And
it's just crazy. Well, we're having some fun tonight, though. I mean, but the old school conspiracy theories, I think, some of them are really playing out, some of them aren't, and it'll be nice to see where it goes. I'm glad I'm alive to see a lot of this stuff, and hope I'm alive to see more of it. I really, really do, because I think times are going to get really, 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 really rough, really rough. But yeah, I don't know. It's insanity out there. So I got to look at Chad. I haven't looked in that room for a little while. Hello, Rocker.
Yeah, and I hope I can find this video I watched a couple of days ago. I'll have to look through my YouTube history. It'll take a minute to find. It was a few days ago, but man, I just can't remember who presented it. But it was an interview with a disinformation agent. What do you call it? Like an intelligence officer, but the kind who specializes in disinformation, kind of like a something similar to like Richard Doty, the kind of stuff he was doing,
right.
One of those types. And it was a confession video he did back in 1989, and or maybe it was 99. And this dude he's probably dead by now. He was already like 80 years old when he was doing this. But he comes out and straight up admits to a lot of stuff that people have been speculating about, a lot of specific for example, he talks about what's that guy's name? Schneider. What's his name? Schneider?
Bill Snyder.
Yeah, Phil
Phil
Schneider.
Yeah.
He talks about being involved in killing him, and goes into detail about why and how and you know, it it was just thing after thing after thing. It was like, you know, some deathbed confession shit. And so it's either one of two things. Either one, it's just 100% bullshit. Or two, it's 100% real. There's like no middle ground.
And the whole Phil Snyder thing kind of fell into question too, with some research.
Yeah,
you know,
there's definitely
by
some
people.
There's some things that don't add up with his
Yeah,
story.
like he lost his finger with a firework or something.
Yeah,
Versus what he said. That's been alleged.
Yeah.
You know, his family's kind of like, you know, and I don't know. I just kind of, excuse me.
Really,
I've seen him debunked a few times.
Yeah, same here. The only thing that really still stands out to me that that even keeps it in question for me, the single thing, is literally just how they found him dead. And that that was really, you know, they tried to say it was suicide, but he was clearly strangled with like a hose. In a manner that he would physically not have been able to do himself.
And you got to remember now, so let's say theoretically, okay, I'm not saying this is true at all, that this whole thing was partly mental illness or whatever. And the UFO circuit picked up on, he was in the UFO circuit. So, and there are UFO people who really are in the know in that circuit that you don't even know who they are. They're just somebody in the audience.
Yeah.
Okay. So who's to say that he might have said he heard something somewhere from somebody else, blah, blah, blah. We heard from somebody else. And maybe somehow he tapped a slight truth. Okay. He might have tapped a truth. So there might have been people going, how do you know this? And then they decided maybe to manipulate him or whatever. And at one point go, okay, let's get a little out of hand. Let's get rid of the guy. You know. So he might not know anything really going in than what he's heard. And it was all because of mental illness, again, alleged. You know, so, you know, then he got manipulated, and then they went, okay, this is going south. Let's get rid of the guy. You know, it's real difficult to say. I mean, it's like, you know, keep in mind I'm a fiction writer, so I can go off real quick.
Yeah, and if you really want to get into some 5D chess, you know, let's say he did, you know, let's say a lot of his stuff was just, you know, either a he misunderstood, or just blatantly false, whatever. But let's say one thing he pointed out did strike a nerve, you know, was on the money. Just one thing that he said. And let's say it was a big deal that needed to be kept secret, or, you know, powers that be felt it needed to be kept secret. So by taking a guy out like that, not only are you, you know, solving a problem at face value, but you're also legitimizing all of the false information that he said, because essentially you're saying this is what happens if you do what this guy did. And so to a lot of people, they're going to say, oh, he must have been right about everything. And what that does is send those followers down the wrong trail of thinking into, you know, they're taking out this guy knowing that people are going to think that he was really onto something with everything, not just the one thing. So it's going to lead them further away from the truth. You know, some 5D chess there.
Yeah, and the thing is that, you know, it brings me back to, you know, the early 90s when I was in L.A. You know, when I was supposed to go see John Lear at some UFO conference and all that. And those two guys came to my office. And, you know...
Did you say John Lear?
Yeah, John Lear. I was supposed to go to a UFO convention and meet John Lear. That was arranged for me to do, and I didn't do it. And I didn't like large crowds. So I was in my office at the rehearsal studio, and two guys come to the office, and, you know, they were like, I would say at least 6'4", 6'5", really good shape, dark hair. They were wearing new jeans that were kind of pressed, and they're kind of dressed casual shirt with collar, and their shoes were kind of shined, and they had I'm not going to say cop-like haircut or military-like haircut, but it was a definite above the ears haircut, and it was very almost uniformish. You know, as they gave the impression of government. I mean, that's the only way to put it. The government agents and of some sort. And they come in and sit down at my desk. It's like 10:30 in the morning or something on a Saturday or Sunday. And I should have stayed. I was going to stay home, and I didn't. I walked in, and they go, they said, well, you know, how is it you know what you know? Actually, I told a story on Jimmy Church probably 9 years ago or more. Before DeLong actually says the same thing I say, but I've said it on Church before he did. So, any rate, is they asked me this question. It's supposed the same question later asked John Lear, or Tom DeLong. Is, you know, how is it you know what you know? That was what they asked me. And they were talking about my writing, because I was writing screenplays at the time. And I'd written Perception Threshold, which is, the book has a lot of errors if you download it, but it's still a good read. But that's a religious, alien, science fiction thriller based on Christianity, sort of, and in Judaism. With science fiction, straight out science fiction. Then I had written a screenplay called Taken, which is an alien abduction story. And then I had written another story I should never have seen the light of day. And then I wrote Ages Past as a screenplay first. And so I think Ages Past was done, and I might have just done the copyright on it. And I think maybe some people in the industry were looking at it at the time, possibly, because I think I was out there a little bit with it. And that's when those guys came to my office, and they go, how's it you know what you know? And, excuse me, and I don't know so much they're talking about Threshold as maybe Taken and Ages Past. So I know they were looking at, you know, because I have William Morris was working with me at the time, the agency, and you know, they really liked Taken really well, but the Travis Walton story, was that his name? The guy had the abduction in the woods.
Yep.
The one, yeah, okay.
Yep.
The Travis Walton story was about to air on air, but now film was coming out. Fire in the Sky, and the studios were concerned that not the stories are similar, because they're not. They're not even close. You know, my whole story starts on Earth, but takes place in an alien world. And I should really turn that into a novel someday. It's a good story. Anyway,
Yeah.
So, but they asked me how I knew what I knew, and I just kind of shrugged and go, I don't know, I just know, you know. And I'll hear people go, oh, you got an alien download. Well, I don't like using that term, seriously, I don't. But they asked me how I knew what I knew, and then the band I was managing in the building at the time, we were doing hemp rallies at the federal building, and I had someone I knew that was a professional, and you know, with communications, private industry, and he did a sweep on my office phone, my home phone for me, and both my lines were tapped. Both my office phone and my home phone were tapped. We did a sweep on them, they were tapped, and we guy worked in the phone company that did this for me. We did a sweep on it, and the lines were probably tapped, and so, but they went off on the hemp thing briefly, you know, the marijuana cannabis legalization, because nowhere at the time did we have even medical cannabis in the country. And I was managing a band called Mr. Ectomy at the time, and they were in the building I worked, where I managed. It was an on-site manager, and we were doing hemp rallies at the federal building in downtown LA. And it was fun watching the feds walk through with their cameras at their hips, you know, dressed up with tie dyes with their short little hair, you know, taking pictures of everybody standing there. You can look across from the federal building to the skyscrapers across the road. You see these feds up there, these huge, giant telescoping cameras, man. It was like, oh my word, man. I met Jack Hara at one of those and smoked a joint with him in a van. You know, park lot of the federal building in the early 90s. That's insane, man. I didn't know Jack here. I can't even say I knew the guy. Like I say I smoked a joint with him though. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I got a really cool crystal too at one of those. But they were telling me, oh, because you can get paint from hemp, you can get, and now we're looking at possibility that we can actually make EV batteries that are better than the lithium batteries that we have now for cars and other batteries as well, probably. And they will last longer. And it's made from hemp, which is a cousin plant to the cannabis, or what's called marijuana, which is really a racist term against Hispanics, or Mexicans specifically. As of the origin of marijuana goes back to, it's actually a racist term. Any rate, is, yeah, so they went off on me about that, going, well, excuse me, they didn't bring up the battery thing, but that just recently, in the last 12 months, that news broke. Well, yeah, this for paint, no, and this for fuel, no, and they kind of went anti-hemp on me, and then they left, more or less. So it was just so bizarre, that happened. And I don't know what story they're talking about. If I had hit on something, like you said, I might have hit on something, and it's very possible I might have, you know. So I'd shrug my shoulders and go, I don't know what it is really, you know. So I hit on, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just kind of bizarre. But yeah, so that kind of thing does happen. Oh, well, yeah, we were talking about Phil Snyder. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that type of thing does happen. Like you said, he might have hit on something.
Yeah. And
I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent. I'm sorry about that.
I
The poor
know.
audience has got to listen to your ramble.
This is a ramble free. Rambling is welcomed here. Just ask Elfman. Now, yeah, John Lee. This might be a dumb question, but is he still alive, John Lear?
Yeah.
He is. What
John
is
Lear's dead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I thought he was dead.
Right. Somebody in Rocky misunderstood what I said. Jack Hara is who I smoked weed with. Jack Kerouac is the author. I wrote On the Road. Sorry, Rocker. That's Jack Hara that I smoked weed with. Author of The Infant Wears No Clothes. If I say Jack Kerouac, I apologize. I never met Jack Kerouac. But I think Johnny Depp knew the guy. But I did not know Jack Kerouac. It's Jack Hara,
Yeah.
But I love to met Jack Kerouac. He wrote some really weird stuff. Isn't that the guy that did what's that Depp movie that he did that the guy's on acid all the time, Gonzo the reporter. Something Las Vegas.
The Hunter S. Thompson book that got
Oh,
turned
that
into
was
a movie.
Hunter S. Thompson. Okay, that's who Johnny Depp unlawfully was. Hunter S. Thompson, not Jack Kerouac. Right, it was Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah, I'm actually not familiar at all with Jack. Oh, he was born in 1922. No wonder I don't know.
Yeah, he was one of the original Beatnik authors.
Okay.
I haven't read any stuff in a long time. I couldn't tell you even off the top of my head.
Oh, I've heard of a couple of his books, The Big Sur and The Subterranean. Yeah, I've heard of some of the books, but I've never read them.
In Boxer's Mind, William Burroughs was another beatnik author. Then there was that one guy. Looked really weird. Kind of almost Stephen King like. Real bushy hair. He wrote this one story that was like one sentence that went on for like 300 pages. Oh, I can't think of the guy's name off the top of my head either. Oh man, but yeah, beatnik authors. So, but I don't know if we're gonna have another. That would be cool to have another beatnik author period in the United States, but I don't know. Despite technology is, I wouldn't expect it per se. I wouldn't expect that per se. But yeah, because beatnik authors preceded the beatnik music, or they came around about the same time. But it was the beatnik authors that had a lot of influence on the hippies of the 60s. And the beatnik authors were like 1940s and 60s, I think.
So beatnik basically means like, anti-materialism, essentially, right?
Anti-establishment.
Yeah. Yeah, so almost like punk rock before there was punk rock. Yeah. Like punk rock authors.
yeah, and then of course, mainstream media has to make fun of the beatniks. They had this shuffle kind of jazz, just shuffle. the jazz shuffle going, and they go like and they got some guy sitting there with this little weird French hat on, a little thing on top, wearing a striped shirt that goes horizontal and vertical. Just kind of snapping his thumb with it's going, and he's like moving his shoulders. They're making fun of the beatniks, and that was like an extreme thing. I don't think beatniks necessarily really look like that, and not in real life. But yeah, bam, the beatnik authors or something. But we haven't had any good beatnik authors for a while. Those type of writers. Stephen King is good. Dean Koontz is good. John Sanford's fairly decent. But those are, I don't know if I consider them to be any kind of beatnik author. Stephen King is a cultural icon. I think would be the best way to describe him. He's a cultural icon. Koontz is also an icon to a degree for that type of people that read his type of thing. John Grisham was for a brief while in his law books, was a cultural icon. But, it's hard to, there's so many, writing's insane. I need to get back to it, though. I need to get back to working on my next book. I haven't touched it in like months. I need to get back at it. The sequel to Accidental Destiny is what I have. About 30% of it written. Yeah. I need to get back to it.
Oh, and that reminds me. Well, I do want to go back to, like we're talking about Phil Schneider and how he may have, at least with one thing, got too close to the truth, so to speak. In other guys that are probably more credible than him that have done the same and have felt the backlash of that. I want to get back to that in a second. But one thing I just want to, nobody's complaining about this. I'm going to complain about this right now. And it doesn't even affect me. But it's even bothering me is, like I was watching a Tucker Carlson, one of his Twitter episodes, and I've noticed this in all kinds of videos. Like, how on YouTube and Rumble and Twitter, you can turn on, and like Instagram and TikTok, it's very common where they have automated captions and subtitles that are auto-generated by a computer, and like 40% of the time it's completely incorrect. I mean, not even spelling out the right words that are being said. I mean, like for example, there's this one clip. So Dave Grush was on Tucker Carlson. He, I forget the entire sentence, but the part that was, he said, he's talking about Senator Reid and Harry Reid. He's like, so Harry Reid was was denied access to a special access program, but the subtitle read, Harry Reid tried to max up access to the, it doesn't even make sense. And it's like every few sentences, they're putting in the completely wrong words. Like he would say, the DOD, and it would just have some random word in place of it. And so I'm just thinking like, man, deaf people out there that are trying to watch these interviews and stuff, they must be going nuts with all these nonsensical sentences.
This is how easy it would be to manipulate society. Okay, I don't know if I should talk about this or not. If somebody would actually go do it.
Yeah, go for it.
But you could do it. Okay, so we have roughly 1 million people from Venezuela that have entered the country legally and illegally. They're looking for asylum. Okay, so let's say I think there's a heavy population around Miami, but you'd have to do it with a Venezuelan population. Is start going out and spray painting, not on buildings because you don't want to destroy someone's private property, like an underpass, like a freeway underpass. V, the letter V, the letter L, the letter A, VLA, and keep spray painting it where people start seeing it all the time, and then go on the internet and post a mime or start some crazy conspiracy, which isn't true. I'm making this all up. None of this is real, to the best of my knowledge. Okay, the VLA is the Venezuelan Liberation Army, and they were fighting the dictator down in Venezuela, and a lot of them, because they didn't have any arms and ammunition. I remember Trump was accused of wanting to invade Venezuela at one point, by the way. So they all fled north to the United States, and so there are various cells of the VLA, the Venezuelan Liberation Army, in the United States, that at one point were trying to throw over their current government and restore democracy. So you got the VLA and Miami and other places in the country, various cells, because they fled Venezuela. And what if the government were to take these former members of the VLA, recruit, because say we have roughly 1 million Venezuelans in the country right now in the last 2-3 years, and it really is actually that high. It's really crazy. Any rate, I don't think it's quite 1 million. It's getting pretty close. You could probably pull up like 50,000 or 100,000 or more of men and women that are like 18, 19, 20, 25, 22, 30, whatever, 30 and under, and take them to a military base that they're going to join the VLA, the Venezuelan Liberation Army. We're going to train them on U.S. soil at U.S. military bases. And then we're going to return them back to Venezuela, armed to the teeth, to overthrow the Venezuelan government. The VLA in the United States, are they active? Of course, I just made that all up. But, someone did some spray painting. They started posting memes on the internet and to the right people, that are all these, they're super conspiracy minded. And, it'd be hard to say who's going to jump on it. It'd be extreme right or extreme left. It'd be interesting to see who would jump on that first. But I don't want to accuse the Venezuelans of doing something that they're not. Maybe it does exist. But all of a sudden the VLA shows up on the internet. You watch that, but it shows up in the next 30 days. It started here. And we have to totally go out and debunk the whole thing, Gigi. He made it all up, man. It's just hypothetical. But yeah, you can manipulate the masses into thinking that there's a VLA, Venezuelan Liberation Army, cells all over the United States. People would freak out, man. They'd be going, "Oh, they're going to overthrow the United States," or "We're going to take them to a military bases, train them, and send them back to Venezuela, armed to the teeth, to overthrow the government. We're going to get in a war in Venezuela." It's you go either direction with that. You could go, they're going to do something here, or we're going to train them and send them back there. You see what I'm saying, Gigi? It's like a wild, crazy card. To the best of my knowledge, the VLA doesn't exist, but, to the best of my knowledge. And sorry for people from Venezuela. I'm not condemning you. I'm just using it as an example of how easily the internet can be manipulated. But yeah, I bet someone could pull that off. Very easily. That's why anything going on is just like when I see all these stories coming up. We're going to impeach so and so. Oh, we're indicting so and so. Oh, we're doing this. We're doing that. It's just like, it's so insane. It's like, oh, Hunter Biden, we indict. He's got to appear before the Congress. Hunter Biden shows up and goes, "Yeah, I'm going to do it. I want to do it in public." And the Republicans are going, "No, it's got to be private." He's like, "No, I want to do it in public so everybody can hear what's going on," and they refuse. But then they don't want to bring up the fact that you had multiple Republican politicians, when subpoenaed by Congress, refused to show up and testify. It's just like so two-faced, and both sides do it.
How do you refuse to show up to testify?
You're not supposed to. If you or I got subpoenaed to testify before Congress and we didn't show up, they'd slap us in jail, man.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I am not kidding. It's like, I'm not kidding. It's like I said earlier,
Yeah, that's why I asked. How are they?
Yeah, they pick and choose. Oh, okay. Again, I don't like Trump. I didn't like him in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. He was even on my radar in the later 90s and 2000s. But in the 80s, he popped up on my radar briefly, like on the news or something. And somebody said something. I went, "Oh, okay." And I always remember what they said. And it wasn't nice. And they were like investors in New York, like Wall Street kind of people. They were around the band I was with. Never mind. At any rate, they were in a position to know. And they said something. At any rate, or to heard people say stuff. So I don't like Trump. But, they're going after him for the fraud, like I said earlier. But are they going after these CEOs and or CEOs and executives for these insurance companies that, I'm going to say alleged, defrauded $140 billion last year of loan out of Medicare? And now they're talking about behind closed doors cutting Medicare to save money? So I said, go after the fraud. Why aren't they prosecuting these CEOs and executives? Everybody's so distracted. They're looking over at, the whole Trump show with a reality TV star, to ignore what potentially is actually a huge crime that may have been going on since 2004. That's almost 20 years, and it was 140 billion alone last year that we know of. And that doesn't include denying these death panels they have using algorithms of denying people care or delaying, then denying. And you got to go to an arbitrator to get it fit to try and get the care that you think you're paying for. If this, see, the thing was with Medicare, you don't have to change doctors. Almost all doctors accept Medicare. And if the doctor says, well, we need to get this leg x-rayed, we need to do a blood workup, we need to do an MRI or whatever, Medicare doesn't say yes or no. Medicare doesn't say no. They go, oh, okay. If the doctor thinks that we should do that. And because that's rampant with fraud. It's cheaper to let everybody get their tests that doctors recommend and then look for the fraud if it happens. The insurance companies claim, well, we're doing these delays and denies because we're trying to prevent fraud. But a lot of people are suffering. People are dying. It's like death panels. Well, you're going to start costing us money for health care. We're going to delay your care, and then we're going to deny it. And then when you're dead, well, yeah, we're going to save money, And, it's kind of what it looks like to me, alleged it looked like to me. So, but they're not going after those people. But they're making a whole big deal of this whole thing with Trump in New York. Yeah, yeah, I'm going old school tonight. It's all somewhat orchestrated. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting how I'm not sure if anybody's noticed. I'm sure you have, whether subconsciously or consciously. It's all been about this Ukraine and Russia war all the way up until Palestine and Israel. The split second that happened, I haven't heard a single syllable about the Ukraine-Russian conflict. It's like it's almost like they just took that out of the news cycle. They took it out of the lineup.
Until last week, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even hear anything last week, but
no. The president of Zelensky's, what's his name, came to the United States because he wants more.
Oh yeah, money. He asked for
yeah, and then the Congress is saying, oh no, we got to fix immigration first, and what Congress is asking, and Republicans, it's going to help, but it doesn't resolve the issue. It doesn't do enough. They don't go far enough, in my opinion, on illegal immigration. Republicans are being wimpy on it. They got the upper hand right now. They should go for a lot more than they're going for. But, and I don't know if they should or should not do this. There's a country in Europe that did this earlier this year, because we're still in 2023, that anybody in the country illegally was subject to a period of time of incarceration. I don't know if it was a year, 6 months or 12 months or 24 months, but they're going to serve time if they made it a felony, basically. And it was a country in Europe did it. And they were providing transportation out of the country for anybody who wanted it for free. And they were telling people, you better leave. And there was a time frame, I think it was like, I don't know if it was August or when it was, that if they weren't out of the country by that time frame, that they were in the country illegally and they were not out by that time frame, that they're going to hunt them down. And they're going to press charges and throw them in prison for like however long it was, or jail for 6 months or a year, whatever it was. But they were like coming down hardcore on it. And I'm surprised that Republicans didn't pick up on that and do the same thing. That they didn't do that, but they didn't. That's not what they're asking for. So Ukraine ain't getting any money until we get our border situation solved. But again, the same point, Republicans denied money repeatedly, a couple of years ago for money to secure the border. They kept denying Biden. And now all of a sudden they want it. It's like both sides are making it get bad. It's all like a dog and pony show, man. That's what it feels like to me. I feel like a dog and pony show,
Yeah. And
I don't like where we're headed. I don't want to see this. If the thing is true, the aliens trying to turn us into them, everything else that went on over. Some religions are the result of contamination, interference. Some aren't. Some are a mix of intervention attempts, whatever. I just don't. We need our freedom and individuality. We got to keep that. We need a law in the United States that prohibits the biochipping, microchipping, or something akin to it. And you can't deny people services for it. You can't deny people health care. You can't deny them employment. You can't deny them banking. You can't deny them access to buying something at a store. Anything. You can't deny them anything for failure to have a microchip or biochip implant or something akin to it we haven't seen. We need that legislation passed. We can't allow them to even force it on migrants or people coming out on probation or parole. It has to be zero. You can't force it on anybody, and if they do, there's a huge fine. When they first started these direct deposits for paychecks in the 90s, a bunch of Christians fought back and said, well, it's kind of a step toward the mark of the beast. We don't want to do that. And then the government and courts were all like, this is in the 90s. I remember it really well. It was like the late 90s. And my employer was trying to do it at the time. I was left the rehearsal studio at that point. I was in Wisconsin, doing call center work. And, I didn't like the idea either. But eventually you got forced to it and became terms and conditions of employment. But they assured us when they first started rolling out this direct deposit that they weren't going to force it on anybody and violate anybody's religion. But sure they did. Why it might not be a law, they boycott anybody who doesn't do it. They get boycotted. Oh, sorry, we can't hire you if you're not going to do direct deposit. Now they got where all these corporations want you to, you have a subscription service. So every month they're going to reach into your bank account and take the money out. Or once a year they're going to reach into your bank account and take the money out. It's like direct deposit in reverse, like direct withdrawal. So we just keep moving more and more toward this where you never get the cash in your hand. And everything's trackable. I just don't. It's headed toward a hive mind, in my opinion, and I just don't. I don't cater to that. You can't force it on any. We should not be allowed to force it on anybody. We need legislation that says they can't do it. But I don't. We might get it. It's where they'll do the same thing the way they did with the checks. First thing it'll be voluntary. Then they'll boycott people who don't have it, and they'll make it the law of the land. But whether they use immigration as an excuse to do it, or banking as an excuse to do it, or healthcare as an excuse to do it, or some other reason as an excuse to do it, or a combination of a number of reasons to do it, it'll be voluntary boycott, and then it'll be the law. And I believe that is going to happen. I really think it is. And I think it's a step toward a hive mind, and we need to be really, really careful. We need to be really, really, really careful. If you believe you have an eternal, it's not that you have an eternal soul, you are an eternal soul. That's kind of what I believe. It's not you have one, you are. You can't have what you are. And, my internal soul evolving toward a hive mind is unacceptable to me. It's just not acceptable. So I'm like, no. I'm a no person. I'm a no person. And that brings us back to the conspiracy thing, that some people believe that taking that chip is saying, I want to evolve toward a hive mind, and the people who don't take it are saying, I want to keep my individuality and freedom, and then they have to sort out the souls with who is and who isn't. It's really hard to say, but yeah, that's just another part of that theory. Again, just a theory.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing you pointed out. Like, a lot of people say, like people kind of, whether they're aware of it or not, they kind of think in terms of I am my body and I have a soul, but really it's I'm a soul and right now I have a body.
Yeah, your body's a temple. Like some people say that the Greys say this, that they refer to the body as a container or a vessel. And the Bible kind of says that too, to a degree. Your body's a vessel. And the Greys supposedly refer to your body as a container or a vessel. So, yeah, there's some truth to that, I think.
Yeah. Along the lines of, the other good way of putting it is, we are, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and but we are soul. At our core, we are the soul. And another interesting, good thing somebody pointed out in the chat room earlier was, talking about getting into like quantum physics and how, that we're essentially just energy, rather than physical, material, and it's more, and it's really interesting when the more particle physics looks smaller and smaller down into molecules and then atoms and then so at the molecular level, everybody kind of has probably heard the analogy, like, if our atom was blown up to the size, if an atom was blown up to the size of our solar system, the actual, how much of that is actual physical material is about the size of a baseball in the center of the solar system. That little baseball is about all the matter that's there. It's like 99.99999% empty space. But even more interestingly, when you go down beyond the atom, you break that up, and then you have electrons and protons and neutrons, and then you break those up, then you get quarks and leptons. And on the quark and lepton level, when you look in there, it's not like the atom where it's a very almost non-existent, but still a little speck of something there.
Oh, yeah.
Within a quark and lepton, there is nothing there. It's literally nothing. It's actually just pure energy and vibration. The energy that's vibrating. There's not even the baseball there. It's just nothing. And so that's really interesting. And, so when so essentially, to put an analogy on it, it's like, if I walk into a wall, I'm going to smack into it. But it's not actually a physical thing hitting another. It's more like trying to put two magnets together. It's one force of energy resonating at a certain frequency and vibration. The wall is resonating at a different type of energy, different vibration, and they are just not compatible. And then from our perspective, it looks like a physical collision, but it's really just energy, conflicting is really how that works. Been going down a little rabbit hole with that. Let's just say I've been talking to Richard Allen Miller a lot this week, and he always, and that's one thing he'll be talking about here in a couple of weeks when he comes back on. Is now it's been a couple of days, but as of a couple of days ago, this is the first time in recorded history that the star Betelgeuse our view of Betelgeuse has been blocked for 4 days. And that's never happened in recorded history ever. Like, I don't even think it's happened for 1 day, and then it's happened for 4. And so now it'd be 6. I don't know if it's still going on or not. And then he's going to get into how, that is directly correlated between the magnetic pole shifts, of which every planet in our solar system has all around the same time, except for Earth and Mercury and Uranus. I believe are the only exceptions. But all the other planets have had their magnetic poles flipped very recently. And
Mars just got hit with a massive solar flare too.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did hear about that. And but I can't reiterate good enough what Rick was telling me about. But it is between that and the work he's doing with NASA right now regarding Mars and Saturn, which we'll just wait for him to come on here to talk about that. He's on, he's got his, he's dealing with some of the most amazing stuff happening in the world right now, and he's right there at the edge of it, especially when it comes to quantum physics and just the work he's doing with NASA. Yeah. Pretty incredible.
I think we're goofing up your time for
re-air
because we're going overtime.
Yeah, I don't. I'm down to, because we usually hang out for a couple hours after the show anyway, and plus we're not in the network tonight since the network's down, so we can just keep going for a little bit here. But we'll get off soon. But another thing, I've brought this up on the show a couple times before, but I don't know if I brought this up with you, but did you ever watch the original Zeitgeist documentary that came out around 2007?
Sounds familiar. I think so. I know what it is. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
it was that guy with white hair, right?
Oh, it was the guy who made it wasn't actually in it. But it was just like Jordan Maxwell was in it. I believe Michael Cremo was in it. It just a collection. But it wasn't like, I don't think they really. It was basically like a collection of all these different clips from all these different interviews and stuff. He just kind of put it all together, and I don't even think he got the permission of all the people that were in it. But they all ended up being glad that they were in it. But essentially, I don't know. I'm curious for those in the audience in the chat room. Have you seen Zeitgeist, and do you remember that documentary, and what kind of impact did that have on you? And I say that because where I grew up, so I was fresh out of high school and didn't go to college right away, and so we just had this, just a total skate house, just me and all my skateboarder friends. Well, two of them specifically. We got an apartment, and it was, the doors were unlocked all the time. At any given time, there was like 20 people there, and people sleeping on the floor or whatever. It was just an open house, and that's just, if you were a skateboarder in that part of the city, that's where you were every night. That's just where you went.
How do you spell that, Zeitgeist? How do you spell that?
Zeitgeist.
Yeah, there it is.
And so in that community, all of a sudden, when Zeitgeist came out, I mean, it took our city over by storm. I wish I would have thought about this at the time. It's only later that I noticed this, but I mean, like every day somebody would come over and somebody had given them a burned DVD with the documentary on it. Now, because this was either right before or right when YouTube was created, so YouTube wasn't really a thing yet. So, people were still passing out DVDs, right? Burned DVDs.
Yeah, there's a couple of movies named Zeitgeist. There's like Moving Forward and blah, blah, blah. Then there's Zeitgeist, the movie documentary.
Yeah.
Sociology, History, Christianity.
Yeah, so there's 4 of them. He did 4 of them, but the first one is really, if you really just need to watch. The second one was good too. I don't think I saw the third or the fourth one. But
it looks like the picture is he who dies with the most toys wins. That's insane.
But anyway, it was a really big deal, and people would come over. Like everybody was coming over with a copy of this DVD. And like, oh, you got to see this. I'm like, oh yeah, like 20 people have already brought this over. Like we already have a stack of them, And I mean, it rocked everybody. Like our whole community. Nobody had, it got into, some of the fuckery around 9/11. It got into the Federal Reserve System and how that actually works. It got into some forbidden archaeology stuff. How humans are a lot older and have been. It touched on various different things. But it was the first big eye-opener for a lot of us, like, into the whole world of alternate theories and basically what led to me doing a show like this right now. Like, this train of thought that I've been on, I first got on this train of thought from seeing this documentary. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be talking about UFOs or conspiracies or anything, So
yeah, see, by the time that came out, I was already deep into all this.
Yeah, it was for my generation just out of high school age. It was a big deal. But what I'm getting at is and it was also pretty controversial too, obviously. And just as many of us really latched onto it, and it kind of changed the way we thought forever. There was a small percentage of our community that were literally afraid of it. They couldn't sit down and watch it. It bothered them. It made them uncomfortable. They just couldn't handle it. But what I'm really wondering is, where did all of those DVDs come from? Because none of us burnt it. We just all had one. I mean, somebody literally imported this documentary, and they injected it into our community. There was clearly a concerted, effort to get this in our city.
You're saying it was a targeted demographic.
Yeah, but I mean, physical DVDs were all of a sudden everywhere, and no, we weren't burning them. We were just getting them. Like, it's almost like like somebody, like a drug dealer that's selling LSD. He comes into town, all of a sudden everybody has LSD, and eventually you can find out, oh, it's coming from this guy who just got here from wherever he came from, right? Like, but
Yeah.
nobody ever got to the bottom of where these DVDs came from, and I don't even think we thought about it at the time. But it's really interesting to me that somebody really went out of their way to make sure we all got our, they were just handing out this DVD like candy, and it was everywhere. I mean, everybody had it, the whole city, in my age group at least, and it was pretty. It was a pretty radical change. It affected our community very radically. If you watch it, I mean, it might be worth a watch, but I mean, anybody listening to this show, and especially you and me, Kat, anybody that's been on this show or has listened to this show, we've obviously talked about everything that's in that doc. It's not anything new now, but at the time, it was pretty. It was some pretty groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah, Dragon Rolls. I think I just shared a link for their website, zeitgeistmovie.com.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And there. Well, so they keep making movies. They got number 4s coming out soon. Oh, did you see? There's a new trailer out. The GTA, Grand Theft Auto trailer was like huge, but another trailer came out this week that caught everybody by storm. A bunch of people. It's called Civil War, which is from Studio A24, I think it is, and it was called Civil War. It's where California. There's like a Western Alliance, like California, Texas, and whatever's between. There's a Florida Alliance, and the United States basically divides into like 3 groups. There's like a Florida Alliance, a Western Alliance, and then whatever else, and they go to war with each other. It's a new film, and the same guy that wrote Ex Machete, 28 Days Later, the same guy that wrote this, and the trailer looks really, really, really good.
Now, what's the name of the game?
The name of the film is Civil War. It's the studio that put it out is A24. So if you do a search on YouTube, what I would do is I would look for Civil War. Let me type it in and see if it pops up. Civil War, and then I think it's A24. Because you want to go to their website to see the
Yeah, if you type in A24, it pops up, yeah.
Yeah, if you pop up A24, it pops up. And it's a really good trailer. It looks really good. And someone leaves a comment in YouTube. They're going, well, I'm going to watch it just to see how California ended up aligned with Texas. That's a good point,
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, hold on. There. It comes out this spring during the primary season for the Democrat and Republican parties. It comes out in the spring. So I'm willing to bet that it goes to Blu-ray or DVD, and it starts streaming like on one of the major streaming platforms, like Hulu or Peacock or whoever. That it starts streaming in September or October, just before the election, because the timing of this to this current election cycle is really crazy. It's really crazy. But yeah, I'll watch it. I'll give you that person on YouTube. I want to see how California ended up being aligned with Texas. That'd be interesting to see how they pull that one off. It's the same guy that wrote like Ex Machete, 28 Days Later, and a couple other blockbusters. So the guy's like a really good writer. So, and the same people have made it. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it looks like a good movie though. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Dragon World. She's on top of things. She's got she's hooking us up with the connects to Yahoo Entertainment link for it. But it looks really, really good.
One thing I just stumbled across last night is, over the course of a few days, a couple things, just a few things that led to this over the last few days. But last night I watched, I think it's from 2007, 2008, a movie called The Golden Compass, which is based on the first book of the His Dark Materials series.
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of almost family friendly. And it was.
Is that the one with the giant polar bear?
Yeah, polar bear with the armor. And
I've always meant to watch that, never did.
So it's actually a pretty good movie, and it has a big cliffhanger. They obviously intended to do the second book.
Compass?
Golden Compass.
Golden Compass, okay.
And so big cliffhanger. There was obviously going to be a second movie, but it never happened. I was like, what? why? It was so good. But little did I know, in 2019, BBC did a three seasons, each season being one of the books. So they did all 3 books, 10 episodes for each book, which you can get on Max, and it's called His Dark Materials.
Oh, really? Okay,
And,
I have access to Max. I have to
Yeah.
watch that.
So, I mean, like Golden
Should I
Compass.
watch Golden Compass first and then watch that?
You could, but really, there's a couple of differences. But I'm only a few episodes into the first season, so basically, what they crammed into that hour and 45-minute movie, that is now fully delved in a 10-episode season 1.
They're remaking The Last Airbender now too again.
And but okay, yeah, and but yeah, it's just interesting that it was a bunch of synchronicities that led me to listening to this docudrama podcast, which is like, it's like a movie, but it's just audio, kind of like, old time radio shows, like storytelling radio shows. It's like that, and it's called, now this, folks, you've got to check out. It's called The White Vault. The White Vault, and there's 5 seasons. The first 2 seasons, which could really just be one big season, they're both, 2 is just a continuation of 1, whereas 3 is a completely different scenario. But check out The White Vault. Such a good story, and I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but it takes place in Svalbard, which is, if you don't know where that is, that's the closest landmass to the North Pole after Svalbard, which is up north from like Norway and that area. You cross the water, then there's Svalbard, and then after that there's nothing. That's like the last land. So it takes place there, and it gets into, lost ancient, structures and civilization, and just out of place history, and it's, some conspiracy stuff, some sci-fi kind of thrown in there. It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah, the History Channel on YouTube has been pushing a lot of the Ancient Alien stuff. Not like the series Ancient Alien, just like Scott Walter doing his stuff. Then they talk aliens and history. It's not Ancient Alien show, but another show. It's on the History Channel in that same vein. They've been posting a lot of free episodes on YouTube lately. And you can find a lot of old UFO documentaries on some of the free streaming services. So some of those documentaries are kind of like, nah. When I see them, I'm like, nah. But, if you look at who did it, who made the documentary, I'm like, I'm not watching that. I have better things to do. But yeah, man, I really like to watch some of the old Jim Mars and John Anthony West stuff. I really should do that.
Yeah, and man, I'll tell you what. The first time I went to Contact in the Desert, I took my buddy Mason back in 2015. We actually went out there we were trying to become a sponsor of Jimmy's show with our e-juice company at the time, and we really weren't part of the community. We just were there for business, but we got to know Jimmy really well, and that's where, that's kind of how I got into this community, was from initially trying to make a business deal with our e-juice company. But that year, so my friend that was with me, he's not really, he's very intelligent, but he doesn't think chemtrails are real. He doesn't, just the basics he doesn't even entertain, and so he's not really into this kind of stuff. But, I had him watch a few lectures anyway, like we watched Graham Hancock and several others. But the other one we saw was Jim Mars. And even my friend, he was so impressed. Like, that totally changed his whole paradigm. He was like, wow, now this guy knows what he's talking about. Like, and ever since then, he's kind of, anytime I tell him, like, hey, you got to check this out, you should look into this, now he actually takes it seriously, ever since he saw that Jim Mars presentation in person. And I found a pretty similar part of that. So part of it was about the JFK assassination, and I found a different lecture, but it's about an hour long on Rumble. It's really good, just going deep into all the conflicting details and all the various theories of what happened there. And,
now there's those 2 new documentaries where they interview the doctors that were in the emergency room, and they go over that. It was two bullets from different directions. I think is what comes up in that. I haven't watched them yet to say for sure, but those are some new documentaries because they interview some of the techs that were actually in the room with Kennedy's body when it was brought in, and medical examiners and the people trying to save his life. And they talk about being two bullets that came from two different directions. So there were two shooters, not one, is what I think the theory's coming out on that.
Yeah. Yeah, at least two.
Yeah, I remember when Kennedy was assassinated. I was alive, but I was really young, but I was alive. I remember that really well.
Yeah.
Kennedy was really liked by a lot of people. He got a charisma about him. He was. I think he would have been a good president if he had been allowed to serve out this whole time. But he was kind of like me to a degree in that, or I'm like him rather, where him and his brother, Bobby Kennedy, they were going after the, military industrial complex, the corporate state per se, and yeah, they took them both out, man.
Yeah.
They took both Kennedys out, and even if they didn't pull the trigger, someone got pointed in the right direction to do it.
Oh yeah, it's pretty clear.
Yeah. There's enough loose nuts out there rolling around to kind of point one a little bit that direction and go, hey, guess what? You could have access to, and get manipulated into that spot to do what they do, and make it more difficult to track.
Yep.
But yeah.
Not only was JFK he was really onto some shit and trying to get some real things done in various aspects of, he's trying to get to the bottom of some UFO stuff. He was trying to get rid of military industrial complex manipulation and things like but also on top of that, he was just a really good he was just really good at delivering a speech. He could sell ice to an Eskimo. And just the way he talked to, like, we do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Just the way he delivers it, is really good.
Yeah. Yeah, he was good. I mean, he, in those debates with Nixon, he just totally wasted Nixon. I mean, on the first televised debates, I mean, Kennedy totally wasted Nixon on that. Kennedy knew how to work the camera, but I'm sure he was doing that with his speeches already anyway. But yeah, and he got us into the space race, which is where we needed to be. This is where we needed to be. So, but they began the dumbing down of America in the 1980s really bad when they started defunding our public education. I mean, it's part of the dumbing down of America, in my opinion, but when they defunded public education, started doing that, it's part of the dumbing down of America, man. Really, really was. But I don't know. I just I look at all the presidents that have come and gone. I'll have to say, well, Kennedy, I was really young, so I don't know if I can really count him or not. But, not including Kennedy. Jimmy Carter was my favorite. I think he was the most working man's president, and he's still alive. He just lost his wife. I think he's 99 or something. He's really old. Kennedy, or rather, Carter. But I like Jimmy Carter. And he was all into the UFO thing too. Remember Gigi?
Yeah.
Carter? Yeah, he was all into that. So, yeah, it was different back then. It was a lot different. A lot different. But I always remember that they, when they, Republican National Committee went to, allegedly, well, actually the guy, that came out in Rolling Stone with an eyewitness to all this, so I think it's pretty much proven true. Went to the Iranians, had them hold on the hostages until after the election to try and influence the outcome. And one of the guys that was a assistant, I guess would be the best word I can think of. There was a different name that he had, but for his position, but it'd be similar to an assistant. With the people that were negotiating to deal with the Iranians, this guy was like present for it. He wasn't part of the negotiations and saying, hold on to the hostages. He was present for it. I mean, he saw everything going down behind the scenes because he was working with the people that did it. And he came out earlier this year, last year, with an apology to Jimmy Carter because everybody that was involved with that is dead now, pretty much. So, and he thought he wanted to give Jimmy Carter closure to say, yes, the conspiracy theory was true. The Republicans did go to the Iranians, went to a foreign power to try and influence the outcome of the U.S. election. And that was in Rolling Stone magazine. And the guy is verified, I mean, there's no debunking him, really. I mean, he was there. He had some position that was there with the people that did it. I mean, he was an eyewitness to it. And, the story backs up. He was able to back up his story and dot his I's across his T's. And he was somebody who's fairly well known in politics. I can't think of the guy's name, though. He was never like an elected official, but he was in the circle, a lot of people are like that. They're like in the circle. So,
yeah. I mean, some of the most powerful, movers and shakers behind the scenes are not in official positions. They're the ones in the circle that are influencing,
yeah.
And, well, anyway, I guess we should probably start wrapping this up. So real quick reminder for what's coming up. So this weekend, got a few things going on. Tomorrow night, we have Pulp Addicts Pod with a very special guest. He's the head and chief of Sega Saturn Shiro, basically a super, if you're into retro Sega stuff, they're like the leading, journalists of the community and keep up with all the homebrew stuff and anything like Sega related. So we're going to really dork out tomorrow night. So if you're a video game dork, don't miss that one. That'll be at 9 p.m. Pacific tomorrow night on Saturday. And then on Sunday, me and Jess Rogie are back to our video game stream, retro video game stream Sunday night, also at 9 p.m. Pacific. And then we'll be doing the first stream of It Takes Two on Tuesday, me and Jess. Well, that'll be a long series that we're going to do. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so definitely, just follow us on Twitter. I'm at Shift Happens Pod, and I'm sure you all know where to find Jess as well. Don't remember her handle off the top of my head, but we'll keep you guys posted on those. Also, next Thursday, I will be on eTalk TV with Jeff Rennell. Jason Quit and Brad Olson and I will all be challenging it's eTalk trivia, and Jeff is pitting the three of us against each other. I'm the defending reigning champ. I've never lost a trivia show over there, and so now I'm going up against Jason and Brad Olson. So, actually, you know what? That's later. But the three of us are going to be on next Thursday for a different scenario. I think we're just going to be hanging out and talking. But yeah, the trivia will be coming later. But yeah, special episode of eTalk TV next Thursday. Sort of a end of the year revolving door with some guests coming on, and me and Jason and Brad are among those. So yeah, definitely tune in for that. And then next Friday, I'll keep it a surprise who's coming on next Friday. And then the Friday after that, on the 29th, we'll be having Dr. Richard Allen Miller to close out the year. And so, yeah, there you go. Yeah, I love those trivia shows, too, Dragon Rose. So much fun, especially when you're awesome and you win, like I do. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't know. It might be tough against Brad and Jason, especially depending on the questions. But we'll see. We'll see. So that's all what's coming up in the next week and for the rest of the year. I feel like
Happy birthday, Brad.
Yeah. And
it's Brad's birthday, isn't it?
It might be. I don't remember exactly, but it's pretty close. But it is Shift Happens' birthday as of, well, in 17 minutes Central Time. It will be, right when it hits midnight, it will be the 7th anniversary of Shift Happens from the air date of the first episode.
Maybe that's why I'm seeing balloons on Brad's Twitter account, because it's the birthday for Shift Happens. Remember, if you go to ADS Brad Harris, you can click on the GoFundMe page there, and to help out with his family in this time of need. So to keep in our hopes and prayers as well, and for healing for his wife. So
absolutely, yeah.
So it's Twitter, and then the handles ADS Brad Harris. So, or you can find it in my Twitter feed too. There's a link in there, and Gigi's as well. You might have to scroll. If you're hearing this a few days from now, you might have to scroll to find it, but it's in there.
Yeah, you'll see a picture of Brad and Jonah and Michelle, and it's a GoFundMe link. Yeah, definitely any help you can, even if it's just like 5 cents. It really does help, and good. We're at least halfway to the goal, which is amazing. But we do need some more help over there. So, pretty serious brain trauma, and a long road of recovery ahead. And Brad's already has 3.5 jobs, and now all but Brad is really. He's handling it all very well, and he's the man. He's the man. He's holding it down and taking care of his family. But all of the help we can get, and I think Dragon Rose just posted a link for it. So thanks, Dragon Rose. There it is in the chat room there, and we'd appreciate that. So, and also, and me and Joe Roop are going to be doing some video game streams this weekend as well. I'll keep you posted on that. But anyway, so what else is coming down the pipeline real quick before we let you go, Casper? What are you working on? You got any appearances coming up? And then also, just where can everybody stay in touch? I
don't do appearances. I don't have the money. It costs money to make you do appearances. I have to travel. I don't think my vehicle's really that trustworthy. CasperProducts.com. You can download my ebooks. Accidental Dusty was the most recent one a couple years ago. I need to get that sequel done for that. And I'm like 30% of the way through it, I think. But yeah, a lot of stuff we talked about tonight, I like weave it into my stories a little bit sometimes. So if you're going to read something right now, I would say Coming from Darkness would be a good read. That's a near future alien UFO book where they herd all the former alien abductees into internment camps. And anyone who refuses a chip gets put into another internment camp. They have a number of internment camps. I think right now, just with our current political environment and everything going on with the UFO thing and Congress and everything, that'd be a good story to read. I think it'd be a good reader. You can keep in mind books, you have some errors in them though. Accidental Dusty's not too bad though. I like that. It's a rock and roll story, but Ages Past is also good too. So especially for a young adult, both Coming from Darkness or Ages Past are good for.
You got to throw Coming from Darkness in there too. That one's.
That's the one I think people should read right now, just with everything going on politically in the world and with what's going on in the UFO Congress. Again, I can't reiterate how important that is. That it was Lockheed Martin that was more or less lobbying to water down UFO disclosure that Biden's about to sign. So that alone says a lot right there. This says a lot. So you can find me at on Twitter, Casper Parks, my website, CasperParks.com. I am on Blue Sky, which is Jack Dorsey originally started Twitter, went off and started something called Blue Sky, and I am over there. That I don't post very often. If someone needs an invite for that, let me know. I'll give you an invite to get in. It's invite only right now to get in there.
Yeah, I might check that out. I have yet to check out that platform. I've been hearing a lot about it lately, though.
Yeah, and Threads is the new Meta Facebook thing, I guess. and I don't like Facebook or Meta, so I'm trying to stay away from them. But yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Gigi. I really appreciate it. And we kind of rambled for a while, but there were some. I think it's good to kind of touch base a little bit with some of the old UFO conspiracies that are out there. Because people forget them. Or people who are new to it aren't familiar with some of the old school stuff. Whether it's true or not, who knows? But or bits and pieces might be. Like I said, when we get disclosure, it's going to be. I've been saying this for years. It's going to be laced with lies and deceit, and it looks like I forgot to add the word watered down. Lies, deceit, and watered down. And the news articles are calling it watered down, and they're absolutely correct. When we get it, that's what it'll be. Lies, deceit, and watered down. So, or watered down with lies and deceit. Might be a better way to even word it. But it's we're going to get something, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But everyone have a good holiday coming up. And next week, Friday, who's your guest again?
I have yet to say who next week's guest is going to be, but it's going to be good. I'm just waiting for the confirmation of the confirmation. But yeah. And then the week after that will be Dr. Richard Allen Miller. He's got some explosive stuff going on right now. And in case you guys missed it, he was just on. We had him on Jeff Rennell's show last night on eTalk TV. Great interview. Highly recommend checking that out if you're into what Dr. Richard Allen Miller has to say. That is, so yeah, stay in touch with us, folks. We're most people kind of take off during the end of the year, Christmas, New Year's, but not us. We're going to keep on going. Both, the radio stuff, the other podcasts, and the video game stream stuff. We're doing it all. So there you go. What? Oh, one thing I wanted to ask, Casper. Last thing is, if you want to come out to Conscious Life Expo, I could get you a free pass there. Just throwing that out there. That'll be like the first weekend in February, usually.
Oh, okay.
Out there at the Hilton LAX, and so you don't even if you wanted to fly, you could just fly out there and then just it's right by the airport. You don't need to rent a car or anything like that. It's pretty convenient where it is, but
you have to get a motel or something.
We'll might be able to do something about the hotel room situation as well, because you definitely want to stay at the hotel if possible, because there's not really any other good options outside of that. But yeah, we'll see. Just throwing that out there. If you're interested in going, we could definitely we could help you out part of the way. So, which reminds me, we need to get Serena back on here. All right, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. This has been Shift Happens here for the Fringe FM. This show is hosted and produced by yours truly, Gigi. Follow us on Twitter over at Shift Happens Pod. And for all social media links, in case you forget, just go to shifthappensradio.com. All of our social media links are there. Archive of episodes right there on the homepage. B-Sides and Rarities episodes are on the other page. It's all right there. Everything you need. Associate producer is Brad Harris. You can follow him on Twitter at ADS Brad Harris. And as always, all blames and faults go to Fran. That's right, hashtag Fran's fault. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned to Twitter for all the other shows we're doing this weekend, and we will see ya sooner than later. Bye-bye.